What is going on, everyone? Hope you all are doing well. We've got a fun chat lined up for you all today. So I'm sure most of you already know AOH Sports, Raul and Ziggy know as well, but I'll let the guys introduce themselves in case you don't. Maybe you can quickly kick things off, Raul, just give a bit of a background on, what you do on YouTube, and then also what you collect.
Yeah, so I'm Rahul from AIH Sports. I like collecting Chicago-based things, as you can see in the background. Huge Cubs fan, so collect a lot of Cubs cards, Chicago Bears, Chicago Bulls, some Blackhawk cards as well. And on my channel, I talk about tinfoil hat stuff, as people say, and talk about the hanky-panky in this hobby.
Yeah, the good old hanky-panky. Same for you, Ziggy. Maybe you can do yours.
Sure. I would, first of all, say I declare myself a watchdog. I watch what's going on. I love to report, poke, play the contrarian, ask the questions people aren't asking, and I do it all independently. Not sponsored, not looking for a sponsor. I accept criticism, love criticism. That's why I love guys like you. I wish that there's more people like Dan and AI out there. They're questioning, asking, poking, prodding, making progress in the hobby. I'm for a better hobby. For collecting wise, to be brutally honest, guys, I'm more of an experienced guy. I buy, sell, trade all sorts of cards, basketball, football, baseball. I don't really PC anything specifically. Things will just kind of fall into my collection for a while, and then I'll move on to it. So more about the experience and the people.
Yeah, that's a really good way to explain it as well. I've got, like most collectors anyway, stuff sort of comes in and then leaves because you get bored of it. I think you see a lot of it these days as well with people that will talk about picking up a Grail card and then, a few days later they've sold it because the dopamine is left. I'm not that bad, but I think a lot of collectors can relate to that as well. Just quickly, like Ziggy and Raul deserve shout outs because they, shouted me out a lot when my channel was first starting. So I want to thank them both. And, they've both continued to do that. And that's, one thing in particular, Ziggy used to do that show where you used to give a bunch of different shout outs and reactions. And I think you still do that to an extent, but you both deserve some credit for that because not a whole lot of people in this space do attribution all that well, to be perfectly honest.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll say, it's funny, like I said, I watch a lot of content and I've always wanted other people to see it. One thing I'll say is I realize all of us have been doing this for several years, but we just found each other a few years ago. But if we found each other back in 2019, 2020, maybe the impact or the voice would have been louder. But again, it's great to be out there. And that's why I love to shout out what I see as good content, even contrarian content, just stuff that's out there to let people see different perspectives.
Yeah, and I think the hobby in general has got a bit better at that as well as spotting that kind of stuff. And it's just coincidental it's happened in a down market, but it's good at least you've got more people, like you said, being a bit more open-minded, watching different stuff, talking about different stuff. It's getting a little bit better. I'll quickly click through some of the comments. So we've got Multiverse Collectibles, who is another guy based here in Australia. I've met him a couple of times. How's it going? Bob Boozle. Porkies. I think it was you, Raul, had to explain what Porkies was.
Yeah, I never heard that.
I think it's an English saying. I think it's based off of porcupines, and I think it's telling lies. It's some kind of I'm pretty sure it's like Glaswegian perhaps, or from a certain part in the UK, but it just means telling lies. Telling porkies means telling lies. Massive Medic, how's it going? Steve Splendor again. Raul collects Barry Bonds cards. He loves the juiced cards. Michael Ham, how's it going? Brendan Ryan, Patches, who's a good person to chat to all the time. I chat to him almost every day now, so that's good fun. Global, I think another guy based in Australia. Will S. Yes, I do like Ziggy's DMT look as well. Here for the hanky-panky. And then Mr. Will Greer, investor himself. You might see something pretty funny about the whole Will Greer thing in a few videos' time, so stay tuned for that. But just quickly, I thought, the thumbnail explains and the title explains what we want to try and talk to today. There's going to be a few things. I think we talk through loaded boxes first in terms of, based on how the market has gone recently with a lot of talk around that, especially with latent sports and tops and all that kind of thing. But then most recently with, the comments from Michael Rubin about doing audits. So we'll talk to that initially, and then we'll jump into things like repacks, Arena Club, and Repack should be a good talk because Ziggy absolutely loves those, so that'll be good fun. And then just jump into more general hobby talk. But I thought, like I said, we'll kick things off with the whole loaded box audit type of stuff. So Raul, you've talked about loaded boxes for a long time. Did you want to maybe give a quick overview of what constitutes a loaded box and why the suspicions have been around for a little bit, and then we'll jump into the Michael Rubin comments around the audit?
So just to summarize, what's a loaded box? That the company, you could look at Fanatics. I also look at Panini. They know which boxes have the cards, and apparently they give these boxes to influencers, to YouTubers, people in the hobby, and they open it on screen, and it's used for a marketing purpose. What's the other thing that you
So
discussed?
yes, so we've seen them pop up a lot in recent months, in particular, especially from Tops. But we've now had the comments from Michael Rubin around them sort of seeing people complain about loaded boxes and things being rigged, and so much so they've hired a third-party auditor to look into it. We don't know the details, but it'd be good to talk through that a little bit as well.
Yeah, so Michael Rubin said that they're going to hire Deloitte, one of the big four accounting firms, to audit where these cards are going to go and what percentage wise are going to be pulled by these breakers, by these hobby shops, and also in the retail arena. My issue with that is you're not looking at the influencers who, in my opinion, are getting these loaded boxes. I could go through many instances and times that I've chronicled where these influencers have been getting specific boxes, packs, etc. One instance was Card Collector 2 having the national pack with the Corbin Carroll autograph, and he graded
The
it.
one
It
of one.
yeah, it was a 101. Was that a superfractor? I don't remember off the top of my
Yeah,
head.
I'm pretty sure it was a superfractor, right? Because he referred to it as being, or was it the gold? Ziggy will know.
Yeah,
I
so
don't remember.
I think it was the national pack 1 of 1. So those are a limited print run. It's not quite as valuable as the pack pull from, like, say, Topps Chrome or Bowman, but it was a very hot pick. Here's my thought. I'd like to chime in on this. Okay, so I believe that there's no doubt that a manufacturer can track what their product is, where it is, what's in it, and so forth. That is part of I think a company's responsibility. That's why they have recalls, right? When something happens. What I think the real issue that really needs to be audited is who has access to that information, right?
Yeah.
I have to assume that somewhere is a secret list that probably has every barcode of every product where the major hits are in certain releases. And it has to know what palette it's on, what box it's on. Now, I'm hoping that it's definitely in a digital world, right? So if I'm looking at the audit, I want the audit to look at the logs. Who has access to that file? Who's logging in and seeing it? And how is it maintained? Eventually, for example, print run data, where hits are even years later, does that leak out? And this is why I'm bringing this up, is I think it's more likely that someone in the distribution channel between a manufacturer and the influencer who gets it is helping get that box to the right person, because they can use things like statistics, numbers. Like, for example, if I knew, and if you're higher up, you're going to know exactly how many NT cases are made. And if I hear that, oh, this card was already pulled, and these cards have not been pulled, I know the statistical probability of the cases I have being better, and then I can direct them to the right person. And I also do believe, and I think we talked about this, marketing does allow for them to say, hey, you know what? We got a new breaker. We got Fanatics Live. We've got to get to those breakers, some of our higher hit boxes, right? Higher quality boxes. And to support this, I'll give you an example. If you've been in the hobby a long time, there were what were called hot boxes, where the entire box would be all refractors, or one box would have more autos. In fact, I remember watching a hot box open, I think it was Exquisite, where it was all Lakers, right? So these things have always existed, and they're part of marketing. So again, what I think's happening, what I want to see the audit bring light to, is who has access to that information that we know is still resides somewhere, and then how are they managing this? And let me just remind you of this. Remember last year when Panini was broken into and server data was stolen? That data in itself could be very, very important. It might tell me where the black 1 of 1 Luca is. That in itself might be more valuable than a lot of other stuff that people are going after.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I talked to that at the time, actually, with that whole robbery, when they mentioned there was very specific things stolen. They broke down certain walls to get access to it. Seemed very targeted for a sort of random ass robbery, right? So, I agree with that. And obviously the things you said about what the audit would need to cover, you are 100% right. That's the stuff you sort of need to look into, and that's where the risk goes. And that's, something that, again, we've been talking to, I think, when we jumped on that stream with Sports Card Radio, a year ago, whatever it was, Raul, when the whole Crown Royale stuff happened, where, there were people that were adamant that you cannot track. Like, it's impossible for them to track hits. It's completely randomized. But like you said, Ziggy, if it's statistic based, right? So you know where certain hits are going. You know every 12 boxes gets this parallel, gets this auto. You can work it out based on the data, right? They need to feed something into that machine in order to do it in the first place. So somebody could, reverse engineer to get those numbers. And there's also been rumors around certain breakers looking to buy boxes of NT as an example, but only buying ones that have a certain serial number on the case. Now, some people are trying to say that's too impossible to crack or decode, but like you said, that's where the risk lies. And that's why, in my video the other day, I spoke about, the internal policies and procedures that need to be checked as part of the audit, right? It's not sufficient for Deloitte or any auditor to come in and simply look at the randomizer. Now, we sort of have to take what, Michael Rubin is saying. He obviously doesn't have the detail, and I'm sure it's a lot more detailed than what he sort of alluded to. But if the audit is literally just looking at cards going into packs and nothing else, then it's a waste of time, because you've then got to look at the distribution channels. You need to look at who has access to the reports and the data. Like Ziggy said, there are so many, other layers that could drive somebody shifting that stuff to somebody they want, right? It's not as simple as literally just looking at, well, our odds are correct. Like, who gives a shit about the odds at the end of the day? Can somebody track the hits and give it to somebody? And you sort of see all these things happening now, like that whole thing with Leighton Sports on preview night. That was ridiculous. And then we've seen it happen with some other product too. And, some people will again say this stuff is tinfoil, but these thoughts are thoughts that I've been having since all the way back in 2013, 2014, when I used to sit there and break with Cherry Collectibles, because they were the only people here in Australia. And I'd see some of the hits coming out, and I thought it was very strange that a breaker in Australia, who has the only Panini relationship in the country at the time, from what I recall, was getting those kinds of things. Now, I don't know if they were in on anything or any hanky-panky happened, as Raul would say, but, it looked suspicious back then. So do you think it's going to be less of an, inclination, or would a business be less inclined, I should say, to do it now when there's so much more money to be made? I don't think so.
Well, I think it's going to happen, right? You mentioned the print run there, for example. If I have visibility on all the big cards coming in big cases, I can manipulate the market, right? Like we saw with the flawless cases a few years ago or I guess 2 years ago with the triple logo man, right? That was people chasing. As soon as that card is out, people start acting differently. If the one thing I like about what Ruben said is he said it, and he said it publicly, which means if this company stays on the track to go public, it will have to answer to that, to analysts and to shareholders.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Before that, if Panini can say it, Topps can say it, they can all say it as private companies, and we all like, oh yeah, but who's auditing them? Who's auditing them? Oh, my uncle's coming in auditing it. This is actually good because they've said it, and now they'll keep their hand on the button. Hey, when you move forward and you go public, someone's going to come in and audit this. And it is very important. It's important to also the stakeholders involved, which are the players. The players are going to want to know that there's fairness in their autograph, or there's big hits. Like, look at Josh Young, who's making those customized 101 cards. He wants to believe that this is not fixed. He does not want to be part of a fraud. So this, in my opinion, it's good. It's getting in the right direction. We're not there yet.
But Ziggy, here's the thing, though. If Topps does these reels on Instagram or YouTube, is that part of the scope of the audit? And I don't think that is, because yesterday I saw, or the other day, there was this individual from Great Britain. I think his name is Dejai, and his brother is KSI.
Deji and KSI, yeah.
Yeah. And he pulled his brother's autograph. I don't think Deloitte's going to audit that. I don't think Deloitte is going to be auditing Caitlin. Who's that?
Caitlin Clark.
Yeah, Caitlin Clark. Excuse me.
Well,
I mean, she pulled an autograph, I believe, of herself a couple months ago. Deloitte is not going to be auditing that. That's just a weird coincidence.
Right. It is. And that's something that you're going to have. I'll put it this way: you believe in Santa Claus. There's a certain amount of trust, and you believe in the product in some way. But where, again, it's not about, is Cade Cunningham pulling his video where he's pulling his autograph? How many cases did he have to sit there to do that? I don't know. Did they send him a loaded case? Probably they did. They sent him one with higher odds, maybe. Do I care about that? Not as much. I'm more concerned about the big hits that showed up when the Topps guy opened the executive one. That seemed a little fishy.
Yeah.
I think some of this, again, I'll say this too. I don't think it's in their best interest to do that. And I'll also say this too, which is because I counter this. If it was just Topps right now, I'd be more paranoid. The fact that Panini and Leaf and Upper Deck are still out there and competing, Topps would be in a big trouble if they really got caught in an audit where, hey, they were loading boxes to people. I mean, that would probably lose their license. They'd probably get sued, everything, right?
Yeah.
Now, fast forward 2 years, 3 years, when Topps owns it all, yes, I want that audit, and I think they're going to want that audit to keep them out of that fraud house, because we're
they'll
always
be
going to doubt
mandated.
it.
But
Yeah,
let
we're
me
always
look
gonna
at the
doubt it.
odds. Let me just tell you the odds of one thing that Collectibles Guru pulled, I think, in his first live stream. I mean, for a break, he collaborated with one of the breakers out there. He pulled a 101 superfractor of Mbappe. I looked at the odds of it, and I did a video on that. And the open a pack, the odds were 1 out of 34,000. And then if you open a box, it's about 1 out of 2,300. I think this was the Soccer Topps Finest. Those odds seem really strange. I think that was loaded, and that was his first stream. That's, in my opinion, if my instincts are correct, that it's loaded, that's fraud, and they're doing it right now.
It's fraud, regardless of if. Yeah.
I'm going to play the opposite though and go, I think it's really unusual that the 101 Stephen Curry hasn't been pulled and the Luka isn't out there, right? So I don't know. Like, there is some randomness in this. There is some just, holy shit, I can't believe this stuff happened. And I don't believe maliciously the manufacturers be doing that. It makes more sense if someone in the chain found out there was a higher odd. But I can put it this way:
it's a rogue employee.
Even if I'm a rogue employee and I knew the 1 of 1 isn't there, I'd probably want it selfishly for myself. You know what I mean? Like, I don't believe that they know specifically who's doing. I don't know. Maybe they are.
Well, because you've had, like, if you took it yourself, you've had employees at Leaf previously try and do that, and they got caught, right? So, like, I can understand why people want to try and be a bit more calculated with it. But you know, if something like this is happening, just putting an auditor lens on, it's going to be a broken control somewhere within the business process that allows one person to sort of manipulate it without the business knowing, right?
Well,
it's
I'd also
far
say
more
this
likely.
too.
Yeah.
We make a lot of guesses on the pack odds or whatever because they printed it, so they're always estimated. It would be great if these manufacturers, Topps, Fanatics, did disclose their print runs after so many years. After so many years, they do all of them.
They're starting to do so now.
Because that would be helpful, right? Because that way you could go back and verify that. And I'd also say this too: if the industry would report in, like the grading companies would say, how many? Like, I'll give you an example. I was listening to somebody talk about the Kobe green PMGs, right? There's only supposed to be 10 of those of that special year, I guess 96 or something like that, of the green PMGs. Well, how many of them are still in packs? There's 10. How many are still in packs? Don't we know how many are out there? That information should all be more public. And hopefully through auditing procedures, and I'll tell you this, the data companies, these are collecting a lot of data. The transaction companies, the data companies, they're seeing these numbers. They're seeing the serial number card. So if all that comes to light in some searchable data house where I can then keep more checks on, like, for example, what really scares me is when you see those 101s showing up twice. At least that came out, and
some of them 3 times.
And we're making changes. And I'll say this too: remember that when these companies do screw up, they are held accountable for it. Like, I watched a video back in, I think it was, I don't know, 90, something like that. The first refractor that came out was said to be 150 copies. Some collector went out and got 300 of them, and he sued Topps. And that lawsuit is what made them start using serial numbers.
Yeah.
But it was because, again, these manufacturers made a claim, someone said bullshit, and the manufacturers had to be held responsible. They had to make the consumer whole. And that's a key thing. Like, that's why I love what we're doing, guys. Like, I love the hobby. And I'll tell you, part of what I love about the hobby, I'm a huge fan of buying breaks. So to me, I want to believe that when I'm in a break, there's a chance. You're telling me the chance. Just tell me there's a chance. Okay? I'm not always hitting for the roof. Yeah, but when I'm in a break, part of the reason I get in breaks, part of the reason I get in hobby boxes is because I want that chance, right? I'm not a collector. I am a hobbyist. I love the hobby experience. I want the rush. I want to feel that, and don't tell me it's fixed. And I know sometimes it looks like it is. So I'll say the biggest news this year, in my opinion, though, 2 things. The buyback program was the biggest thing that Fanatics has done to the hobby to grow it. And that announcement that Ruben made is bigger than people realize. Because, like I said, that's public now. Now we wait a few months. They start to go public. People can now question. Here's what I'd say, too. When you see suspicious stuff, you should report to Topps. Maybe someone creates a web page, all suspicious activity. Hey, auditors, look at this. Maybe there's a place we could start self-reporting that. Here's one. I'll give you an example. I was watching If Sports. The guy who pulled the Solace, and I think that's the right name for the Bowman product, the Bowman Superfractor 101, the guy holding the bat from San Diego. He pulled his Superfractor, and he pulled his Bowman Mega Superfractor, the same breaker, same area, both those hits in the same place. That, to me, is very suspicious. How those 2 Superfractors end up there? but no one's really talking about that. It's a small breaker.
Mhm.
Unless you caught that, you didn't know about it. But if that was on Fanatics Live, or if that was Backyard Breaks, or that's Leighton, we'd all be talking about it. So there's anomalous, weird stuff does happen a lot in the hobby, and we're seeing a lot more of it because there are also a lot more of these one-on-ones that weren't as, you know, there's 3 or 4 one-on-ones in the Bowman world, where there used to be 1 when Trout was out. When Trout's original superfractor was 1. Now a player has 4, I think, superfractors, or 5,
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there with a few things, or most of the things I should say. The whole Ruben comments, I think the best thing that he said was the fact that he came out and said something, right? And the fact that he also said they're starting to pay a bit more attention now to the people that basically have tinfoil hats on. He didn't use those words, but he said, even if we think they're wrong, we're still going to look into it. How much of that was true? Who knows? But it's at least good they're coming out and saying it. You know, I said in my video earlier today that, yeah, it's fantastic they've come out and said they're doing an audit, but what about, you know, the stolen cards from last year that people have all of a sudden forgotten about, that had, you know, fake autos put on them and all that kind of stuff, right? There are all these other mistakes that I hope they, you know, start talking about a little bit more. But, you know, the threat of them going, you know, listed and going ahead with their IPO is going to do, you know, wonders for this industry, because people don't like government intervention, but Fanatics want it because they want to get listed, right? Michael Rubin wants to maximize the money he can make off the back of these businesses. And if they do go down that path, stuff like this won't be able to let slide like it has been, right? They're going to have so much more regulatory pressure on them that they're going to have to, you know, do stuff. And from Top's perspective, to answer Jay's question on screen now, basically saying what is necessary today to show a box is not loaded, I think they need independent audits, and those independent audits need to be made public, and those independent audit reports need to give you the context of what was actually looked at, right? You need to sort of have a sign off on, you know, not just the randomization of packs, but the distribution, the IT related controls on who has access to all this sort of stuff, you know, segregation of duties across that whole process, and make that public. Now, Tops might not want to do that, but I think the hobby probably needs it, to be perfectly honest with you. And especially when you're going down the path of Fanatics Live becoming as big as they want to make it, right? That's going to have a lot of oversight, because there's a huge risk of fraud there, as I've talked to before as well. To Michael Ham basically saying, I know Panini's list is the servers that were stolen that no one talks about anymore. A very good point that Ziggy mentioned a bit earlier. There's a few other comments here. I'll click through them. Was there anything you wanted to add to that, Raul?
A quick comment I'd like to make. A way that manufacturers could restore trust and create an almost 100% check system, and you guys, I'm just spitballing this, is that I buy a box, there's a logo on the front. I open the box, or the breaker opens the box. He hits the logo into the system. The system goes up to the server and it confirms. So you then put in, what did you get in your box? You know, your hits, not all your cards. What are your major hits, your refractors? It then would check it and say yes, and then it would then confirm what it expected to be in the box. Maybe not to the exact card, but yes, you're supposed to get a card number to 99 that should be a rookie. Yes, verify. Right? So you almost get a check system. You put the code in, the code goes to the cloud looks at the inventory. Yes, that's the right thing. You got the right box. Your box was not tampered with. Your box is not, you know, messed with, or any issues with your box.
Yep, agree. That would be really cool. I hope we do see some of that innovation, because Ruben's talked about, again, doing some really cool stuff with their app while you're watching games and things like that. So something like that would be a good step, you know, in the right direction as well. I think the best thing that happened with Fanatics coming in, they've done a lot of really bad things, but it's their ability to sort of disrupt the industry, right? The sports card hobby and industry as a whole has been pretty piss poor for a long time. These businesses took the piss, and it's pretty clear they have done that, just based on the fact that Ruben has literally been able to embarrass them at every step so far. So it's cool to see what he can try and do, but it's also incredibly scary about, you know, the monopoly aspect as well. But you were going to say something before, Raul.
Yeah, so I wanted to pick your brain. So Ruben said that he wants to make sure that 15% of the hits go through breakers, go through the hobby stores, the LCSs, and then also retail. How is he going to audit the retail sector and the LCSs? I'm just trying to think, how do you do that? I understand the breakers. Okay, it's run on Fanatics app live. I'm just trying to think, that's going to be a tough task, because not everyone opens on camera. Like, do they have some sort of tracking system?
Well, because I don't think they'd be auditing. I think they'd be auditing the process before the distribution, right?
Yeah.
The whole thing. So basically, we'll just have separate channels that each of the things go to. So some will go to breakers, some will go to, you know, local card stores, some will go to direct customers, and the audit will happen over that, right? So the distribution process, that's why the distribution process needs to be, you know, factored into that audit.
I think what he means in retail is that he has certain number of hits that should show up in retail, right? So of the 10 golds, 2 of them should show up in the retail product, 4 will show up in hobby, and 2 will show up in something else. And I know I've heard companies doing that, right? Upper Deck does that with their e-pack. Only so many cards are in the e-pack versus that go out to the regular, so many in retail. So breaking up the number of hits is likely. And Topps has been doing that for a while. Panini did not. Panini retail used to be totally separate from Panini hobby.
Well, Panini have sort of stuffed it up recently, right? Because you've had some hobby boxes, you've had some first off the line exclusives show up in hobby boxes and vice versa, right? With some, I think it's 2 or 3 products recently. So,
but you haven't seen any hobby exclusive products show up in retail prison boxes, where they have been like Topps 101s have shown up in retail. You're like, how the hell does that in a retail box?
Yeah, yeah. It's just it's what makes that situation even more intriguing is the fact that Topps own the manufacturing facility that Panini owns. So it goes to the comments I made a few weeks ago when it comes to that lawsuit, the antitrust lawsuit between Topps and Panini, and back and forth between the two, because Panini are sort of saying that Topps are doing stuff intentionally to ruin their business, right? And they're saying they're doing it for other businesses that use that manufacturing facility as well. But I wouldn't be like, how tinfoil would it be to say that Panini is maybe doing some of this stuff intentionally in some capacity to try and make it out like Topps is doing it intentionally. Now, again, corporate espionage is a completely different type of topic, but wouldn't surprise me in the sports card world, given all the stuff we've seen.
There is a Panini or Topps executive that 20 years from now is going to write an amazing book about all the bullshit stories that have been going on. Because you're absolutely right. It's a very small community. These guys all know each other. And I can't wait for it to come out. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. I 100% agree. Trading Cards Immortal saying feeling a bit drained by the typical stuff being pushed by the hobby. I'm the same, to be honest. I've not. I think the last hobby box I bought would have been this time last year, actually, or maybe around Easter. I buy a lot of retail stuff when I'm out and about because I want to scratch that itch, but I haven't really bought much product. I know Ziggy buys a lot of products, so maybe you could talk to that a little bit more. But for me, it's more just buying singles.
I'm not like I'm balling and spending a lot of money on product, but I find it's the best time right now. There's so many cool things to pick from. I'm going to have a total new strategy going into 2024 where I'm only going to get product through breaks. But this last year, I didn't buy any singles. Everything I got was through like the Montgomery Club or some type of direct from the manufacturer. I love those programs, or through breaks. And like I said, there's so many different sets, right? They had the Bob Ross set that was out this year. I love the Sapphire stuff, chasing that. So to me, there's a lot of different opportunities, and everything's not a home run. It's not all about making money, but there's a lot of fun things going on, a lot of fun rookie classes.
It's just unfortunate that it's too expensive. Like, I used to bust a lot of hobby product. Like I said, with Cherry Collectibles via breaking back in the day, I don't really use them that much anymore. I need to buy stuff, for gifts for people and stuff like that, because they're still really the only retailer here in Australia. But it's just a shame that stuff, I feel like product is just too expensive. Like, I like busting product. I was the type of person that was busting product, once a month, sometimes more than that, for 10 years. So it's just disappointing. I can't really do that anymore because it's just too expensive. Michael Ham says they probably have agreements with breakers that promise them specific big hits. I wouldn't be surprised if I see that, if that was true. But like I said in a video maybe 1 or 2 months ago, I've had breakers reach out to me that used to be staunch in the sense of saying, loaded boxes are BS, but they're now saying they think they're getting loaded boxes from Topps and Fnatic. So I think the tide's turning a little bit on some of those things as well.
Let me also add, you have to remember, most breakers were not getting product directly from manufacturers. They were getting it through the Peachtrees, the Go GTSs of the world. And one of the things that we forget is that before the boom, the hobby had a lot of stinker products that no one wanted, and they sat in the channel. They sat in these big block stores. They couldn't do anything with it, right? Hoops is a great example of that. Hoops used to be a garbage product that they would give away. They couldn't stand there. It's like, if you want 1 case of Flawless, you got to buy 40 cases of hoops. And they'd be like, shit, what am I going to do with all those hoops? So that used to be part of the chain of the distribution. That's all changed now. Breakers, for the first time, now have direct access to Fanatics Live or to Panini Directs, right? Or Leaf. They have more power than they've ever had. But I've been told that if you're not one of the popular ones, if you're just a regular guy who's been going through the Peachtrees, the Go GTSs in the past, they are getting choked out. The smaller breakers, the ones that I've been seeing for years on Facebook, are losing because if they're not getting on a Whatnot app or one of those apps, they are being choked out. So I think distribution is changing a lot for the breakers. It's going to
Yeah.
change a lot for us too.
Well, I think it's a hugely positive thing for the hobby, because now Fanatics, like I said when they first announced that they were acquiring Tops, is it gives them the opportunity to own the whole process and not lose money due to inefficiencies. All right, why should they be paying somebody to distribute their goods and all that kind of stuff? Right, the fact that they can streamline everything between going directly to local card stores and then having their own breaking platform is going to be beneficial for the hobby long term. Now, that has some issues with the off the back of that with the whole monopoly mindset and all that kind of thing, but it's going to be a good thing for the hobby long term, if it goes how everybody wants it to, right? I'll quickly, yes, sorry, goes you.
No, so I was saying, could use this as a transition. I think the key thing to look for right now is what Fanatics' position is with repacks. If Fanatics were to come out and say, look, because in my opinion, repacks are stealing money from Fanatics. If a guy is spending money in a repack, he's not getting a break. He's not opening a new product. He's slowing down the progression of the system. Okay, I got a whole reason why I don't like repacks we can get into. But if Fanatics is smart, they come out and say, if you're going to be on my Fanatics platform, you're going to do my products, you cannot do repacks, breaker. No more repacks. Yeah. And it will clean up breakers in a lot of ways, guys, because a lot of breakers are not legitimate businesses. They are buying their own breaks. They're hiding it with other people's names. They're setting their friends up in breaks. They have whales that come in and buy the accounts. And they have a few fish that feed into their system, very transient. They feed on people, predatorial. But if you clean that up, where there's nobody getting in, oh, you want that repack, it's such a great product. Clean up the breaker community by, again, you cannot have product directly allocated from Tops if you're going to be repacking. You want to be down the chain and be one of the bottom feeders of repacks, fine. That would change the hobby a lot. And that would also keep product prices more fair to the consumer. If I can come in for a good value to get a trusted break and get my favorite team or chase my favorite refractor or whatever the card might be, and I feel it's fair, that's how you're going to grow this hobby. As long as there's distrust, there's dishonesty, and there's predatorial breakers who, again, if you see a breaker doing a repack, I guarantee you one of three things. They're getting a lot of chargebacks or non-payments because people aren't hitting shit, so they got product they don't know what to do with. They're either buying their own breaks, and they've been buying them for a long time. They don't know how to do the shit. Or they've been giving they give breaker credit to a guy who hits a card. You hit a kaboom of Chris Paul, they're going to give you $1,000 in breaker credit, which is more than comps because they can put that in a repack and use it to bait more people in. So repacks, breakers, bad community.
Yeah, 100% some of that happens. Let me go through the comments quickly, Raul, and then I'll go to you. But I'm really far behind in the chat, and I really don't like that. So give me 5 minutes to go through those. Let me know if you guys see any comments you want me to bring up. Patches saying hello to Brett. He hasn't bought any new timepieces, Brett. At least he hasn't told me yet. Upper Deck's holographic serial numbered box codes have yet to be cracked. Is it because we don't know they've been cracked or not enough people are looking at them? That's probably a fair question to ask. Just audit the serial numbers under 100. Let me see. Not sure who you're referring to there. Or are you talking about Patches and his root sub? You should, Patches, because I've seen a heck of a lot of people pick up precious metal watches in the last week, so it looks like they're a bit more available. Yes, I saw this video. Let me see. Would it be better if no serial numbers were on it? Maybe. It just comes down to like how those serial numbers are actually being used internally and all that kind of stuff, right? So let me quickly go through a few others. Need more tinfoil. Do you guys see any comments you want me to bring up? And apologies, everyone, I'm really far behind, but I'm not used to having two people on. So
no, take your time. This gives me a minute to grab a drink, and this is great, man.
Collectibles Guru takes pics in his Subaru to give the impression he gets boxes from a local card store. I've noticed that as well. This guy's like the ultimate content thief. He's got a little bit better at it. I've given him shit in the DMs before, but it's just pretty funny that he's all of a sudden now starting to get some pretty big cards as well, which might be perfectly fine, but I don't know.
He called out I'm sorry to interrupt, but he is the one that called out, remember, over a year ago, the Panini Crown Royale situation.
Yeah.
And then now he's getting what, 1 out of 1 Mbappe cards, Superfractor, 1 out of 34,000 chance for a pack. Like, come on.
Okay, what I would say is I do think that those codes can be broken. I do think it's sad that when that did come to attention, we all talked about it, and then it went away. I mean, there's a lot of smart people out there who are looking at lots of different angles. So
this is a good comment from Carvin, who has a lot of, inside information considering he worked in that industry. I believe he helped create Exquisite. You can correct me if I'm wrong, Carvin, in the comments, but he says seeded boxes can only be manipulated with ill intent. It would be impossible to track afterwards. I'll take your word for it. But at the same time, impossible seems to be a bit of a tough word to follow, given the way the hobby's gone in recent months as well. But again, outside looking in, we don't really have the details. So everything we're talking about should be taken with a grain of salt. But
I'd love to ask him. I'd love for you to have him on, maybe to ask, because I do know you're talking about, and he did talk about they'd come in and hand pack all these products. My question there is, again, when they're hand packing them, what is my first thought is I can mark the box and I can see where the box goes, but I have to assume they don't let you do that. There's a separate group that comes in. I'd love for someone to talk us through what they do when they hand pack out these products, right? We've heard about that. They hand pack out NT, they hand pack out Flawless, so that they know. That's what we know. Hey, they know what hits are going in here. What breaks that chain of custody? Where's the trust there? And like I said, how does that audit it?
Yeah, well, like I know how I'd go about it from a controls review perspective and all that kind of thing, but I don't have the details, so it's too hard to sort of answer. But just from what I've seen from studying it at university, obviously, and then working in that industry, and I will quickly say that these are just my opinions. They don't represent my firm or anything like that. But you see breakdowns with manual controls all the time, and it doesn't take as much as people think in order for manipulation to occur, right? You see these things sort of happen all the time. You look at the whole Enron situation. There wasn't too many people there that were working alongside Arthur Anderson, as an example, to get all that stuff happening. Now, you're talking about incredibly systematic and pervasive fraud there, but it was limited to a small group of people that others weren't really aware of, and that's obviously on a completely different end of the spectrum. But when you're talking about the sports card hobby not necessarily having the best risk appetite based on what we've seen in the industry and all the mistakes being made, the fact that you've typically got entry-level employees working in a lot of these channels, it's like, well, how much oversight is actually there? How strong are their controls? And that's why I'm super excited for Fanatics to get listed. I'll say it again, because the second they get listed on the stock exchange, their control environment, their process are going to have to get uplifted through the roof like they've never seen. And these guys are going to literally have to break their backs in order to uplift all the material process to be in line with, appropriate reporting standards and all that kind of stuff, which I'm not sure if you work in that space role, any SOX level companies or anything like that, but I'm sure you've studied it and you know what they're like, and it's very intense.
I used to work in a company that had to deal with SOX, so.
Yeah, and it's not fun, right?
No.
And not fun for an auditor either.
Not fun for me.
Ziggy, that's the gold refractor of Jerome Jago, is that how you pronounce his surname? One collector has
Yamir Yager.
Yeah. Okay.
Yamir Yager.
Okay, thank you. We've got Neo here, more hobby boxes open on camera by breakers than the common man by a vast margin, of course. Yeah, I completely agree, and I think you've done some really good, insights on that in some of your videos recently, Neo, so I'll take that. Of course, that's definitely true and needs to be kept front of mind. Sometimes the tinfoil talk gets a bit too exciting.
Let me echo what Neo said. If you do it to put it on YouTube or not, everybody should open your product on camera. That's how you're able to go back to the manufacturer, say, hey, the 2 hits aren't in there. You should always have your own personal camera whenever you open a box, whether you plan to share it or not. I just recommend that. It's good for you. It protects you, and that's, again, part of the consumer protection.
Yep. Yeah, and Neo, to clarify what you said earlier, Raul, Ruben never said he wanted 15% of the hits to go to certain places. He said 15% of product is being opened by one breaker, which I believe is, what he said. And I think Carbon said something along the lines of here, don't forget, Tops was publicly traded in 2006 until Eisner bought them. Manufacturers will only release revenue and profits. I just think the way things are going, Carbon, from a, Fanatics Live perspective as well, and they want to get into that whole gambling aspect, I think that probably needs to be something they need to change slightly.
Let me just say, that's a good point, though. He brings it up. So that means, and someone said earlier, I think I was listening to Vintage Card Check guy, which I really like him, but I think he was totally wrong today, where he said that they all get audited anyway. So that means Topps probably did not have a third party coming in and auditing their distribution process of hits back in 2006 while they're public. So now Ruben would be the first one who's publicly come out as a leader of a manufacturer and saying that he's going to have a third-party audit. I mean, that to me, like I said, is groundbreaking in the hobby, because I don't think it's ever happened before. I don't think the hobby's ever been audited at any level in the manufacturing side. So, and please correct me if I'm wrong. in the chat?
I'm not sure. Maybe I think Carvin said he wants to come on. Do you want to send him the link, Raul, if you've got it?
Yeah,
and
let
you've
me
got him
just send
Teams?
Carvin the link.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Let me see where I'm up to in the chat. Sorry, guys, I'm really behind today, so I do apologize. We still have to get to repacks, which is going to be a good chat.
I know. I say I do have limited time, so I do want to get to the repacks a little bit. I just will be. I'll have to cut up at 9.
Okay. What time is it for you now?
I got 19. I got 20 minutes basically left.
Okay. Well,
and I'll go a little over if I can, but I could have some scream in the background any minute. So
all good. Let's jump into repacks first, then we can come back to some of the comments a little bit later on, and then
Sure.
we can bring Carvin in as well.
Sure.
So obviously repacks have been the talk of the town. I think Neo did a few really good videos on this, speaking of him, because I just saw his comment again in recent days about how the world's sort of gone a little bit mad in the sense that repacks literally have to, well, they're literally everywhere right now. And you've got, people coming out like Blair's and shitting on repacks, and then a few days later, they've got their own repack and all that kind of thing. I know you've shared your thoughts on repacks quite a lot in the past, Ziggy, and you sort of did a little bit earlier as well, but maybe you can do a quick summary and then we can jump to Raul.
Yeah. I do appreciate this. I really appreciate this time. First of all, Dan, more than you realize, because I've been passionate about this for a long time, and not something I just picked up recently. You've given me the loudest platform to talk about this. I want to try to do this rationally and explain this to people, okay? I look at repacks very much like fentanyl, okay? People will justify, well, he can't get access to pain meds. That's why he did the heroin, did the fentanyl. It is going to kill the hobby. It is not good for the hobby. I'm going to go over that, but keep that in mind. It is, to my opinion, it's like fentanyl. It's like a drug. It has been here. It will come back. It will have its rise and have its falls. The first question I ask people when we talk about repacks is, why are you making a repack? Now, most answers will tell me, oh, I'm doing it for the kids. I'm doing it to make things fun. I'm doing something because people can't afford this. It all comes down to money. The reason people make repacks is to make money. And two things to consider when they're making money, okay? They are putting their time, packaging, effort, energy into that. And the more they tell you about the checks and the systems, and don't worry, you're not being cheated, that means they had to put more time, energy, and effort into it, which means they increase the money, which means they have to make that money back. Now, again, knowing all that, just simply accepting those two facts, they're making it for money. The more they put into it, the more money they have to extract out of it. Now, what are they doing? They're putting in products that they are time stamping of today's market value. As of December 2nd, this card's worth $50 on Card Ladder. Great. Two things I want to point out. Go show me how you turn $50 of cards into cash today. It's not easy, and most of us know that. That's a dirty secret. Turning a card to cash is not easy. Okay, so don't tell me it's a $50 card. And second fact, we know it's a declining market. So you're selling me something that tomorrow will not be worth 50, that next week will not be worth. Now, there's a hope, dream, maybe he plays well, but that's not the case. That is why repacks are on the rise. Why didn't they repack in 2020? No one wanted to take the chance of putting a Topps base Mike Trout into a repack that was undervalued, that, oh my God, you might open grade and make a lot of money off of. So the whole purpose of repacks is to make money, and they're doing it in a scamming way. Because again, why not just sell the card at market value? Why not sell it at 80% of market value? Why not sell it at 60% of market value? Because they know they can just dial down how low the floor is, how high the chase card is, how many packs they have to make before they sell that product to make money. Everything I've said so far, guys, assumes that the repack is even legit. The last point I'll make before I even go into this is, we just complained about loaded boxes and trust the manufacturers. How would any of us be foolish enough to trust one individual or one individual's organization to create, distribute, manufacture, hand out, just get that repack out to us without telling us something's not going right? And what I mean by that is, Jeff Wilson can make a great repack, and as I'm selling it, distributing it, I go, oh, this one's really the better one, because I know 3 other ones already got pulled already from the other packs. The information that comes corrupt out of repack process is just, it's ridiculous. And I already hit on it earlier. Breakers are making repacks because they're already doing something sketchy that they shouldn't be doing. Okay, so I'm open to any questions about repacks. People tell me, my buddy's got a great repack. Your buddy might be the only one, right? Everybody else will tell you, well, there's definitely a repack that's bad, right? Everybody knows a bad repacker. It's like, I don't even know. And here's the thing, guys, to all the influencers out there, if you don't do them, don't say, well, I don't know. Some people have, just say, no comment. It's something you should, it's something you should look into, or do some research. You are sending people down the wrong road to even suggest them. And if you see your friends making them, like I've had conversations with friends, they go, you're right, Mike, I can make one of these. They're easy to make. I don't do it because ethically it's wrong. That's really what it comes down to, guys. This is an ethical line to me. Okay, I've explained to you why they make them. I can explain to you all the things that are wrong about them, right? I don't know why people do it, why they even support them. Like, we should just turn the other cheek. If they don't buy the repack, they will buy the box. They will buy the single. They will buy the break. And that is what's healthy for the hobby.
Yeah, I agree. I'm still like, I still like them, and I know that I might be caught me some heat. I like repacks for like what SP123 basically says here, where some people don't like buying singles, they want to rip something. So I can understand why people want to scratch that itch, especially if you like that whole mystery element. I just think the hobby needs to get better when it comes to the standards around tracking what's in them, right? And I think you mentioned earlier what Topps might be able to do in order to allow that to happen. I think Fanatics Live has a good opportunity to go, one step further than what Whatnot is doing, because Whatnot specify that you need to show, the floor, ceiling, average, all that sort of stuff. They should mandate that you have every single card in that repack listed. They should mandate exactly maybe the comp at the time of purchase that the breaker used. That should be listed there as well. But I think because I know like repacks are generally bad just based on what most people are doing out there, and that's a pretty easy statement to make. You go to card shows, you're seeing dodgy stuff happen. You go to streams, you see dodgy stuff happen. But I would really like Fanatics Live to sort of, they're going to stay around is firstly the point, right? They're not going to go anywhere. And what Fanatics Live should do is mandate that if you sell a repack and all the spots don't sell out, then you can't sell that repack the next night. You have to rebuild it for the next stream, that kind of stuff, right? Because one of the other problems you didn't touch on, Ziggy, is the fact that what some of these guys will do, as we saw with Justin Gamble, is they'll bust open repacks, sell them on the stream, and then replace that hit, but then not adjust the floor, the ceiling, or anything like that afterwards, right? That's a big problem with these repacks too, because they say it's 50 boxes, but is it really 50 boxes? When you're topping it up each night, it gets more and more watered down, and you're taking the piss a little bit even further, I should say. So
let me just explain, sir. I can explain to you a fall for everyone in that model where, let's say I have 100 repacks, they have to sell it tonight. What happens is that they use a whale, or they use their own team to buy 50 of them, knowing that they have a 50% chance of hitting their big hit and getting all the money. It's like buying in your own RAS, right? All that corruption that you have when you have one system controlling the creation, the distribution, the selling, all that's the problem, guys. When it's in one house, one roof, one eye, why would you trust anybody? Don't support it. Let it choke off. I know you made the comment you like to open packs. What I hear that screaming is Fanatics. Make this man something that he gets to enjoy that, right? For me, exactly. I understand. This is stupid. I like my NFTs. Okay. I'm not going to recommend them to anybody. They're a waste of money. They're stupid. Do not do NFTs, but find something else. Maybe you can buy a pack through a machine. Fanatics needs to find a better way to get you something. And I'll also say there is a difference between these manufacturers who make these repacks and guys in their kitchens and breakers in their kitchens and breakers in general who are doing it, right? When MJ Holdings does a repack, I don't like that. They take a little tin and they're repacking the hits. And if you think about this, why does every tin have a goddamn hit in it? Because I can open 50 blasters and don't hit any, which makes me think they sit there, open 50 blasters, and then I don't like them, but there is a difference, right? Because again, there is a manufacturer that I can sue, that I can go after. Don't support these kitchen repackers, right? I just think if you take that away, Neo made a comment, the hobby needs repackers. I disagree. The repackers need the hobby. They need us. We are the right people. We should control what's going on. And I want to remind people, repackers are not paying 90% comps for your junk cards. They're only doing that on your chase cards, right? You can't sell your Luka to them for 90%. They're not going to buy your Luka-based PSA 10 for 90%. And if they are, then they've got a really bad repack if that's their chase card.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt, but
no problem.
Let me play the other side of the argument. Why not let people decide how they want to use their money? I mean, what I'm thinking is, I don't buy repacks myself, but if someone wants to spend like $50, $75 and, they know the odds, for this arena league or arena club. I know you and Omar were going back and forth the other day, and they do list the odds. I still wouldn't buy it myself, but, and it sold out. I went into their website, and assuming they're telling the truth, it sold out. So that's just my own thought process. If someone wants to, probability isn't too high getting a nice card, but if they really want to spend that money, isn't it on them rather than,
these companies? I will say it's an ethical decision, in my opinion. I understand the buyer beware mentality. Let them do what they want. Then I also say then you should allow the criticism that comes in, right? Like, if, for example, and I've even seen this, if you're in a Whatnot stream and you're talking up the Repack product, you become their best friend. Man, that's a great thing. Buy more. Oh, let's do this. This is awesome. You have more of those fire products? They'll send you invites to join the chat because you're helping them sell. You make one comment about, man, that isn't even worth the floor. Boop, you're blocked. You're gone. You're ghosted. You're negative. You're the bad thing. And I guess it goes back to think about like why we have an FDA. At some point, something has to regulate, and there is nobody regulating the market here. So it has to be a voice that says, look,
you're the one regulating, isn't it? Free market regulation.
You're right, and that's what I'm saying. We get drowned out, blocked out. So I don't know the answer to your question. Like AIH, I love what you're saying because it's a libertarian question. Free market, they have the right to do what they want with their money. I can't. I wish I could have an argument with that. I have the same argument saying I'm going to continue to call repackers the worst things in the fucking hobby. Okay. In fact, I think I'll give you an example. Repackers to me are the same guys who wait for the girl who's 17 to turn 18. They're the same ones who fly to Asia to go visit people. You have an ethical line that you morally are so deprived that you are going to scam people out. Just honestly sell the damn product. If it's so great, if you love the hobby, if you want to grow this for kids, sell the cards openly. Stop putting them in envelopes. Stop putting them in boxes. And I think you're cowardly when you do that. So that's how I passionately feel about it. And I spend your money any way you want to.
Yeah, well, you're being overly harsh as always, Siggy. I think the criticism is definitely fair, right? There's a lot of people sort of ruin it for the guys that are doing it. Well, it goes back to how Breaking sort of handled during the last few years, where the guys that were around and established it sort of got left in the dust by the guys that were looking to rip off customers, and there's a number of examples of that. But I think repacks are always going to be around. People like to bust that sort of stuff. People are free to spend their money how they want. I think we just need to have maybe a bit more respect from the people that are facilitating this on their platforms, like a Whatnot, like a Fanatics Live, like an eBay, to sort of police it as much as they can. You're never going to, prevent the scam from happening 100% right. But if you sort of mandate certain things on your platform to specify that you need to show the floor, you need to show the price in which you bought it or what the comp was at the date you bought it, you need to specify that it has to be busted in one stream. And then if it isn't, they need to rebuild it. And then, be really tough, more importantly, when people do come in and complain and say this thing was a scam, or they ripped us off, or they put things into the repack that weren't true, or the hit wasn't put in there. They just need to hold these businesses, and these breakers, I should say, a bit more accountable when they do get caught. And then eventually you can push them out of the hobby by doing stuff like that. You've seen where you've got breakers, scamming people, and they still have people going back to them and using them, right? People are going to be their own worst enemy with all that sort of stuff. But the way Michael Rubin has talked about wanting to use Fanatics Live and use that distribution channel, they have the ability to be sort of the white knight that we need them to be, and sort of bottleneck, distribution to breakers. And if all of a sudden they've got people that are scamming people with repacks, well, hang on a minute, we're not going to sell your product directly anymore. And there's already been whispers around, I don't know how true this is, Carvin maybe has some inside information, just based on people he knows in the industry. So maybe inside information was the wrong word, but there's whispers around Fanatics maybe even doing a stranglehold, in the sense that if they sell your product and then you sell that to somebody else, they're going to be critical of you and maybe restrict your, allocations down the line. I'm not sure if that stuff is already happening, but that's just some of the whispers I've been hearing. So another thing like that would be good to try and stop this sort of stuff, right? Use your distribution of product as an ability to hold these people accountable if they make mistakes. Because if you F up, we're going to not give you any product anymore.
So let me just make a comment here. I mean, at the end of the day, repacks has been around for 15 years. I mean, Leaf did the first repack, like the best of. If you think about it, Super Break's been around for over 10 years. These were the beginning of the repacks, right? And what I will say is that people with ill intent are always going to have issues with anything you do, whether you're a breaker, whether you're a repacker, or doing repacks, right? And at the end of the day, if people with high integrity and people are meaning well for the hobby and for their customers, and they want the service for customers well, they're going to be good for the hobby. I mean, here's the difference between repacks that we're talking about, where people are buying cards and all that, versus buying actual product. Actual product, you basically have a price point, and you have the higher echelon cards, chase cards, right? Repack usually has a higher floor. So if I'm spending $100, you hope to get back like $50 to $75. when you're spending $1,000 opening product, you may only get $70 or $100 in secondary market value. So the thing is that a lot of people feel burned by buying wax that didn't get anything big. And at least on repacks, they feel like, well, at least I'm getting something. I'm still opening packs. I'm still enjoying it. You know, obviously the game of chance that we're talking about, I don't really want to use the G word here, right? But it's like opening a pack of cards. And if the right people are building those pack of cards, whether it's a manufacturer, whether it's a repacker, maybe it's myself, that if I start doing repacks, then we provide enough content in there for that people to know. Whether you want to be transparent or not, you know, it doesn't even matter. Because if it's people that you trust that have high integrity, that's the main thing that you want to deal with, right? Like if I'm buying singles from you, either three of you or anyone else in the chat here, and they have bad integrity, they're going to have fake slabs, or they're going to have fake cards that have been graded by PSA or trim cards, and they don't disclose that information to you, then these are people with ill intent, right? Low integrity. If you deal with someone with high integrity, you never have to worry about what you buy or what you sell to them. And a lot of times, even if a card is bad, they'll actually take it back and say, you know, that's my fault. I bought it as a bad card. I'll refund your money, right? So at the end of the day, it's really about the person that you're dealing with and the people you're trusting with, whether it's a manufacturer, whether it's a store, whether it's a fellow dealer, or just between collector buddies, right? So I don't look at the product as itself. I look at who your partners and who your friends are in the community itself. That's more important than anything else.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to look at it, actually. It's something that I've talked to a few times in the past, and maybe something that gets forgotten about in recent months, especially with how people go ahead and buy. They jump into random streams. You see people talk all the time, where there's guys that will talk about how, you know, they bought into a repack. I think I had a few people email me this, and they'll talk about, you know, they've never watched anything that this person has done before, so they've gone in and bought something and then got burned. And it's like, well, you sort of need to do your research. You know, all the blame can't go on the person selling, right? You need to have some obligation yourself to sort of look into things and making sure you're doing your due diligence. But then, like you said, if you seem to be like a trustworthy person, that's going to go a long way when it comes to buying and selling product as well. Was there anything you wanted to add to that, Raul, Ziggy?
You know, the only thing I'd say, again, we've had too many instances of people who've been seen as trusted, card porn, therapists, who, if they had a repack product, what do you do now? Right? Like they didn't, but what if they endorsed one? Like, why would you put that trust in an individual? And I'll also say this too. If you do have that, if you create one, a card collector too, I think is a really good guy. He might even have a repack. What if his repack is sabotaged? Right? What if someone creates fake ones and makes video? I don't understand why people who make repacks see this. And again, I also think there's a big difference too between Leaf making a repack and Card Collector 2 making one in his basement, or me making one in my kitchen. Right? There's certain, I guess it's like liquor. At a certain point, you shouldn't be handing moonshine out to the general public. You want to make moonshine at home for you and your friends, that's one thing. And we're not policing this.
Sorry to interrupt. What do you think about P. Ryan packs? I've seen some of the videos. I don't have a problem with what he's doing. Those seem like fun. I think Dan the Card Man has seen his videos on that as well. And I think he offers a refund if you don't like it.
Yeah, if you don't like it, he gives you a refund. And he also does giveaways too off the back of that. So
again, I'll say here's my criticism of him. I know you're talking about it. I've never watched his full thing. I hear great things about his. There's another guy, I'll shout out his name, Roto Breaks. I've been very critical of his. I'll say this, even if you're doing it right, guys, even if you're the best, you're setting an example to young people, teenagers, 20-year-olds, 30, people who are not good actors, who look at yours and use yours as an example. And we all know that, right? Because every repacker, even the best one will tell you, yeah, you're right, they are scams. But mine's different. And I'll say another thing too. They get targeted for where you can move stolen and altered product. Okay, what I mean by that, if you're a great repacker and you're buying 70, 80%, and I'm a thief, I'm cracking the cards and I'm getting them into your channel of buying because you're going to buy them, you're going to put them in your repack product, and you don't even know or care. At minimum, you are a target to moving stolen, altered stuff. Like why? And I'm specifically talking again about individuals. Why are you taking that risk? Why do you want to be a manufacturer now making a product? Don't do it. Do something else in the hobby that's good, man. I mean, make slabs, make cases. I don't know. I am going to drop off. I really do appreciate everybody's opinion. I will say, Raul, you're right. I mean, there always will be that buyer beware. I can tell you this too, Raul. I'm a father. I'm a lot older now, and my opinions have changed a lot as well. Because I very much, when I was younger, was very much, screw it, buyer beware, take care of yourself. But as I've gotten older and I'm a parent now, I guess it's changed my view. So that is something I will add to the little mix. But I really appreciate the challenge you guys have said. And just know that I think it's an ethical line. I'm not going to support repacks, but I'm not going to. I buy from breakers who do repacks. I don't buy their repacks. They know I know how I feel about it, but it is what it is. Carmen, it was great just being on the stream with you. I have been a big fan of your product for years. So cheers to you. Dan, again, thank you very much, man, for having me on. Guys, have
Thanks,
a great
Ziggy.
night. I appreciate it.
Have a good night, Ziggy.
Have a good night.
Yeah, so I think like from my perspective, like I think it just comes down to the hobby needed to get a bit better when it comes to holding these businesses accountable and stuff like that. Like when you're seeing the same with breakers, right? When you're seeing people like take the piss, take advantage of people, call it out when you see it. But vote with your wallet, go somewhere else, because there are plenty of people out there. Like the P Ryan packs is another good one, Raul, that you mentioned, where he gives people refunds if they don't like it, and people have taken them up on that in the past. And he talked about it recently in a live stream as well. People are sort of free to spend their money how they want, but you need to be making sure it's going to the guys doing things the right way, because there are too many out there, unfortunately, that are trying to rip people off at the moment. It's very painfully obvious, right? Just make sure these guys are being transparent. They're giving you a floor, giving you a ceiling, all that kind of stuff, and actually watch some of their things before you go ahead and buy them, because that's going to be the biggest tell that you need on whether or not they're doing things above board or not.
Apologize for my background. My daughter is pretty
good,
obnoxious in the background, so that's why I didn't want to be around her, and she don't want to be on camera and all that. So I apologize. I'm in the car where it's a little bit more quiet, and you guys can hear me more clearly.
I really appreciate you coming on. There was a few things you were chatting on about loaded boxes and things like that. Was there anything you wanted to talk to on repacks first before we jump back to that, or?
No, I mean, let's just put it this way: no matter what people you're dealing with, people with bad intent are always going to have people with bad intent. I understand where Ziggy's coming from with repacks and stolen merchandise and all that, but you could be selling cards that are stolen. You could be eBaying cards that are stolen, right? I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, if you do your research and you basically have people sign an affidavit and give them your driver's license, that's probably the max you can do, right? I mean, whether it's stolen or not, you don't know unless you dig around and look at eBay. And there's a store that I know that I had some cards walked into a store, and he looked on eBay, saw this exact same cards on eBay, and then he goes, "Oh, that's interesting." He goes, "What happened to this one?" He goes, "Well, I bought this. I guess the guy didn't take it down. I bought it off the site." And then all of a sudden, he found like 10 other cards that were on eBay, and he goes, "Oh yeah, I bought those too." And he goes, "So you've been buying all these cards?" So basically, he called the person that on eBay that was selling it and say, "Hey, did you lose a bunch of cards?" And he got the guy's number and basically track down all these guys' cards for him. So at the end of the day, we as a community, we have to be willing to help each other, right? People with great integrity and great intent are always going to do better things. So I always, like, for example, when people look at cards and buying cards, I want to deal with people that I'll pay more for a person I trust than buying it off someone that I don't know and I don't trust. And that's the main thing that I always tell people, like, build your relationships first and foremost, right? So, but that's all I have about repacks. I mean, repacks could be good, repacks could be bad. It all depends on who's doing them, and if people take them back, especially if there's a mistake, then that's awesome, man. That's all we can ask for.
Yep, I agree. There's a comment here from Patches. He says, "Should thank Carvin for the Jordan and LeBron exquisite autos and such I sold during the boom. My retirement in kids' college and car fund. Thank you also." I was chatting to Patches about this actually yesterday. He's basically sold a lot during the boom. He was teasing me a little bit about that, but he did really well, and he wants to thank you.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, the person you have to thank is actually yourself, right? Like, even for me, after creating those cards, I think LeBron, Jordan autographs from even 03, 04, they're only going for like $300-400 a piece, even the limited logos, right? Had it been me getting those cards, I probably would have sold them. So I would have told you to sell them. I go, there's no way these cards are worth six figures, right? So to be honest, the person that you really have to thank is yourself for holding on to them, and you had diamond hands, and that's great, man. I'm glad that it help fund future endeavors with your family. Obviously, I wish I had some of those cards, but I don't. So I'm still struggling with a mortgage, and I have a young daughter too. I got to take care of her now. So.
Yeah, I think the whole hobby thanks you, because that's sort of set the tone for, especially stuff that I like to collect, right? Patch autos. I've talked all the time, flawless soccer, is my go-to set. I absolutely love it because for that sport, it's probably the best I've ever received. I know Topps do some cool stuff, but for the time being, it's the best we've got, and probably without Exquisite coming out back in the day, that may not have happened. So again, my thank you for that as well. But your thoughts on loaded boxes? So there were some things in the chat that I missed. I do apologize. As Neo said, I did my best impression of Dustin, the sports card dad, because I got really far behind on chat. So I do apologize to everyone. We'll catch up a little bit later on, but maybe you can share your thoughts now, Carvin.
So I know you guys were talking about hand packing, right? So the whole purpose of hand packing was not, there's never any ill intent. The whole purpose of hand packing is basically assuring that people, collectors, at that time paying $500 a box, which is a lot of money back 20 years ago, right? We wanted to make sure that, let's say if you got a Jordan patch, or let's say you got a LeBron rookie. Well, if you got a LeBron rookie, we obviously would downgrade all the filler cards. So that's the idea, was to basically kind of provide some parity or some equal value as much as you can. Obviously, if you got a Kobe limited logo, I mean, that's not the same as a LeBron rookie, but at least you would give them the better cards or filler cards, right? So you'd probably, maybe I might put a Magic Johnson autograph with the Kobe, or a Larry Bird autograph, because those were Larry Bird and Magic Johnson's were filler cards back in 0304, exquisite cards. Or another rookie like a Chris Bosh, like autograph patch, not the rookie itself. The rookie itself would have been a box hit for a Chris Bosh or a D Wade. So that's the idea. And also, we also understood that at that time people want multicolors. So we didn't want to give someone with 3 autograph patch cards with all single colors. So if we did that, then that'd be our fault. We want to make sure that, hey, someone gets a really nice patch, then all of a sudden you got someone with single color patches. So I can tell you all kinds of stories. I mean, I helped out in customer service. I did redemptions to and this was all on my extra time. After I was done with the day, I would go down to customer service and help fulfill like redemptions. And there are bad people out there. I'll give you an example. So there's one time the guy had 2 redemptions for autograph RPAs in football, right? Exquisite RPAs. So I gave him 1 outstanding patch, 5-color patch, like with a ton of breaks and an emblem, and 1 single color. Lo and behold, 2 weeks later, we get the return saying, hey, this is a damaged one, which was the single color, and they wanted a replacement, and they kept the multicolor one for themselves. And they asked me, said, why would you damage a card? Why would you ship out a damaged card? I go, it wasn't damaged. I of all people, I know my condition. Obviously, if it's not going to be a PSA 10 or a BGS 9.5, but it'd still be at least an 8.5 or so, right? So you can't control it with thicker cards and borders that are very colorful, so you can see chips and all that, especially with the thicker cards. But I immediately knew that, man, okay, that customer, you better red flag, because he's.
Were you dealing with card porn? Were you dealing with Juan Garcia?
No. we're talking about 20 years ago.
He was not around back then.
I don't know all that stuff. Like even another story I can tell you is, like, for example, there was one rookie that wasn't a patch rookie in Exquisite 0304, and I think I've outlined it with Jeremy Lee in discussions. And when I went back, because initially we weren't going to hand pack Exquisite, but they did the collation 3 times. And the 3rd time I went in there and I said, man, this case hit, because this card is a case hit, it's number 23. And I said, his autograph looks different. Jordan's autograph looks different. And I took a closer look. I go, are you kidding me? You guys mixed Darius Miles as Michael Jordan as a case hit. So I had to go through all the case hit, pull out all the Darius Miles, pull all the cards. And then at that point, I realized that there was a rookie by the name of Kyle Korver. We never invited him to the photo shoot, but I promised on the solicitation that there would be 1 RPA per box. So I pulled out all the Kyle Korvers and I combined them with all the big rookies, LeBron and Carmelo, pretty much, right? And sure enough, we got a complaint from somebody said that they got nothing in their case. And I asked, at the time, you guys know Chris Carlin was he worked in customer service. And I asked Chris, I go, tell him to list me all the cards that this person got. List out all the cards, nothing big in there, right? Obviously, he held back whatever it was, the box hit or case hits, the bigger cards. But I saw Kyle Korver was in there. I go, holy jeez, this guy hit a LeBron or Carmelo, and he's still bitching to us about not having something big, because I know I hit all these cards together, right? So that just tells you, like, once again, like, and it's funny, because the first day when we were hand packing, there was no security. I was down at Graphic, because Graphic graphic converting in Texas used to be part of Upper Deck, and it was in the basement of Upper Deck on the first floor, and we were in a private room, and I was doing all the cloud covers. I had the 3 logo men, dual logo men's in front of me. I had all the LeBrons out of 99. I had all the Carmelos out of 99. I got a bunch of 101s in there, like the patch auto base cards 101s. And I looked at the guy that was working with me, that was my assistant, and I said, guess what? You know what I always said about stealing? He goes, yeah. I go, I would never steal unless it was worth my while to do it for one time only, right?
Mm.
And he goes, so what do you think? I go, if we take all these cards, we can go down to the Grand Cayman Islands and open up a hotel, and then we're done. And then he goes, then he looks at me, and I looked at him, and he goes, so what are you thinking now? I took a big deep breath. I go, well, I can't walk around with eyes in the back of my head for the entire life.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, the people that really will enjoy these cards are the collectors, right? And also for another reason why I wanted to hand pack it, for selfish reasons, I actually want to see all the cards. So that's part of the reason too. So we painstakingly hand packed between 3 or 4 people about 6 days straight, 18-hour days, just to hand pack it, to make sure that the content was more fair to everyone, instead of having these loaded boxes that we're talking about. Like, you don't want to have 2 101s or 3 101s. So when it comes to loaded boxes, what I will say is that a lot of times, look, it's all based on collation. If you collate the things properly, if you collate it, like some people will collate by autographs, some people will collate it by patches. The way that I used to collate all my cards was by value. And every year when I did a secondary market, I always do a post-mortem on all the products that we did. And I noticed that in Exquisite, every 101 would hit $1,000. Even if it's a base 101, it was selling for $1,000. So at that point, I said, okay, well, if a base 101, like a lot of times I will do case hits or box hits by perception, right? Perceived value versus actual value. But once you find out what actual value is, then you start looking at, okay, well, a 1 of 1 like Pape Sal rookie, which someone gifted me actually from the National, a Pape Sal rookie, even though it's not a great 101, it's $1,000. So, that would be like a B grade or a C grade case hit. And then you can add some like Magic Johnson autographs or Larry Bird autographs to go with it, so that people still look at that Larry Bird and go, I got a Larry Bird auto, but I got this 101 too as well. And then lo and behold, when they go on eBay, that's $1,000 card. It pays for most of their case, right? So those are things that you have to monitor. And I think monitoring the secondary market will help people understand how to collate the product properly. And I think that's the key. So, and here's another side story. I have all these stories. I apologize.
That's all good. Everyone's loving it. Don't complain, please.
So the first year that started, right? And obviously when I joined Upper Deck in 2001, UD Golf was the first year. Upper Deck Golf with the Tiger Woods rookie. And one of the guys that I knew was a big golf fan from Canada, because I moved there from Toronto. So I'm Canadian, so I'm more aligned with the Commonwealth with you, Dan. And I think I'll see you in Macau. You're going to Macau, right?
Yeah, I'll be in Macau. Yes, yeah.
Okay, yep. I'll be there next week. So
awesome.
So anyways, he goes to me, he goes, hey, SP Authentic is coming out. I said, yeah. And he goes to me, he goes, well, why don't you tell me which cases has the Tiger Woods out of 900 SPA rookie? I'm like, all right, what do you think I do at Upper Deck? I go, I'm creating products. I have spreadsheets galore in front of me. I got Word documents, building strategic briefs. So I go, so you're thinking that I build products, but yet I go down to the factory on the conveyor belt looking at the cases, following the single card that goes into these packs, from the packs going into the boxes, and then each box going into the case. And then what do you want me to do? Mark the cases for you? Or memorize the serial number? I go, that's just too much work. I go, number one, I don't have the time, and I don't even have the ability to do so. And I go, number two, if I actually had that secret, I'd buy all the cases myself, right? Just to be honest, like, why would I tell you? Then I just buy it all myself, right? But at the end of the day, that's where the detail is that's why I say, like, with ill intent, if you want to see things, definitely that's bad, right? But in terms of after that whole initial, like, if it was unintentional, it's almost impossible to trace, because it goes through so many hands. You got to follow, like, out of, like, so the way that the packs are created, there's like 15 different, like, imagine 1,000 count box that are on top of a conveyor belt. and each card drops. So you got to follow that card before it gets into that 1,000 count box, before it drops into the conveyor belt, and then goes on the conveyor belt and follow that pack, and then into the box, and then from that box on, look at the serial number. And the other thing about the serial numbering of the stickers, it happens when all the boxes are finished. It doesn't happen when that card goes into the box and they serial number and they can memorize it. No, they have a stack of all the boxes and then they serial number everything all together. So you would have to identify it's the third box from the bottom of the 100 stacks of boxes and say, okay, once I put the serial number, that's the one I know. Also understand that there's also in terms of people working at the co-packers, they're not allowed to carry any pens, right? They're not allowed to carry. They have to change their clothes, right? And also a lot of these people do not know the value of cards in there. Even today, they do not know the value of cards. Now, and there's signs everywhere inside that co-packer that says $10,000 reward if someone's caught stealing. So if you outed someone else, the guy next to you stealing, you get a $10,000 reward.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So those are
that's good.
So those are things
that's good insight.
Right. So I mean, I those people that are working on minimum wage or even and you would see like when they come in, it's a busload of people. It's just jam packed, and $10,000 to these people would make a huge difference.
Yeah, life changing, right?
Yeah, life changing. So.
Because I think there's a video on YouTube from a number of years ago. I think it's the Panini manufacturer where you can see the chutes and the cards dropping into the packs and all that kind of thing. My thought process was always, well, could you, if you know roughly when certain hits are sort of falling into certain packs, then you can work out how many packs are being produced per hour. Could you work out roughly which cases might have, but like you said, it's probably going into different hands and all that kind of thing. But my response to that would be that's what maybe Topps should put out and have a bit more clarity around what the manufacturing and packaging process looks like, so it can squash, some of these questions. Because I think there's a lot of people out there that sort of take what you say, Carvin, and then they'll see these things that happen with some of these breakers, and they're seeing things that happen on preview night, like the whole latent sports situation, and say, well, that doesn't look right. And there's a number of breakers that have also come out, and again, those breakers could be saying that because they're jealous or they just want to, I don't know why they'd be saying that, but it just looks suspicious for the person outside looking in. So my mind goes to, okay, what could Topps and Panini do to try and create some more clarity? And then they might think they don't need to, but I think they have an obligation where they probably should be doing that sort of stuff. We want it's 2023, right? We need as much transparency and insight as possible, and that only benefits them at the end of the day to give more clarity. Yes, people, will still not believe it, even if they prove it 100% that loaded boxes are not possible. But I would like to see them do a little bit more to make things more transparent.
Yeah,
do you have any thoughts on that?
So I do have a lot of thoughts on it, on everything that people are interested. Like I've done a lot of roundtables with collectors, and what's interesting about when I do the roundtables is like I will tell them all. I pull back the curtains, right? And you gotta be careful as a manufacturer to pull back too much, because sometimes it's information overload, right? Yeah. And when it's information overload, it becomes more tiring. Then you'll get bored of the hobby quicker, right? It's not as exciting. So I'll give you an example so that you can compare it to. For example, like people will say, hey, why don't you show all the patches of, let's say, the Cup rookies or the Exquisite rookies, right? Like, why don't you show them all? Mm-hmm. Well, what people don't understand is that, look, when there's a LeBron rookie patch auto out there and it's a single color, obviously it doesn't go as much as a 3-color patch, right? But then people will say, hey, I don't have enough money for a 3-color. I'll buy the single color right now and I'll slowly upgrade. Well, those are secondary market economy that happens. Like the guy will upgrade and then he'll sell off his ones. But then if you always see that there's 5 cards that are nicer than everyone else, then all the big collectors will, I'm just going to hold off. I'm not going to buy it until I see one of those 5 cards, right? But you don't want that happening. You want people to immediately rush to buy the first one off eBay or off any platform, and then afterwards they'll see a nicer one, then they'll upgrade, and then they'll upgrade. And that helps the economy of like people, every transaction is liquidity, right? So that's important. Otherwise, all the guys that open Exquisite, I got a 5th grade LeBron patch. No one wants to buy my card. Now they're going to downgrade my card. Well, you want people to be able to say, hey, I don't know what's out there. And I'm speaking from personal experience, because when I used to go into Upper Deck, before I went to Upper Deck, I go, oh man, like this is the 90s, right? I got a jersey card. Look at this stupid piece of red jersey, but that's cool. It's only one in every 3,000 packs, right? And then later on, we saw patches. I was like, oh, look at the patches. Look, it's all white with a little bit of yellow, but it's out of 15. This is cool. And then as soon as I went to Upper Deck and I saw the production and everything and all the cards and all the jersey cards and all that, I'm like, this is sensory overload for me on jersey cards and patches. And at that point, like for the time that I worked at Upper Deck, for the first 5 years or even the 10 years I was there, I didn't even want to look at a jersey card anymore. I didn't care about looking at patches, right? All I cared was, and every time I go to a national or I go to an event, I don't collect cards. The only cards I would buy is basically for my daughter to have so that she could have some of the cards I created. But outside of that, all I collect is memories and build relationships at the card shows. That's all I care. I collect memories.
Well,
and I
that's the best part of the hobby,
relationships. That's what I want.
Yeah, you said something interesting there.
But the thing is, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'll jump to you in a sec, Raul, to maybe ask a couple questions. But you mentioned like them releasing all the patches up front. That might mean people lose that, desire of the surprise because they know what other patches are out there, and that might then make things more targeted for people on the secondary market. But I would still really like to see these manufacturers release those and make it publicly available. Maybe not immediately, but maybe 12 to 24 months after release, because you've seen some of these things, including the Kevin Durant. I think RPA is one of the most patch swap cards from what I recall. I'd like to see some of that stuff get avoided as much as possible. And I think to myself, well, what is the sort of easiest way to do? What's one of the most effective ways to do that? And a manufacturer releasing that information, I think, does a heck of a lot. Now, from my perspective, do they have to release that to the public? Probably not, but could they give that to BGS and PSA for reference when they're grading? Sure. Could that stuff still then get released to the public afterwards? Sure. But then I think these manufacturers maybe need to be really strict on those graders and their ability to sort of share that. But I just look at all the ways we can sort of get rid of some of this, hanky-panky, as Raul and myself like to say, within this hobby, and doing something like that would help a heck of a lot. We also see some issues in recent years. We've seen it for a long time, but in recent years around, wrong autos getting put on wrong cards. I feel like there's a lot of things that could be happening internally to maybe fix some of that stuff, and maybe you can, share some thoughts on that as well. But I'll let Raul ask a question or two, if that's okay.
Oh yeah. So I don't know if you would know anything about this, Carvin, but I look at the odds of some of these influencers going back to what I think are loaded boxes. I see these odds of influencers picking these hot picks, and they're on camera and they're showing, hey, look, thing what Caitlin Clark the other day I talked about, not the other day, but a few months ago, there was, like I said, Collectibles Guru got this one Mbappe card. The odds from a box, 1 out of 2,300, 1 out of 34,000 in a pack. There are many others as well. I think Ty from Chasing Cardboard, he was on a video with some kids. Topps gave him the product and is 1 out of 3,000 chance of pulling a Mike Trout acetate card. So from what you were saying, it seemed that there was a strong control process when you're at Upper Deck. What I see here, just looking at the odds that Fanatics is putting out there, it looks fishy to me. Obviously, I could be wrong, but Michael Rubin even said that, hey, look, we're trying to market here. And I don't think they're going to be looking at the influencer. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but, that was just my own thought process.
Yeah, I mean, once again, I'm not inside the building. I tend to look at everything in terms of like, there's stated odds, obviously, but it's actually, to I guess Michael Rubin's point. I mean, it's great to see a kid get an acetate Trout card that's worth a lot more money because it now encourages him to be a part of the hobby, right? And I think that's in a sense it's good. But I mean, realistically, if you think about what Mike Rubin has done, I mean, what has he done? He brought Tom Brady to all these, trade nights, right? And Travis Scott and Kevin Hart. And he's also he had that whole video with the girl with Devin Booker at Burbank Cards, right? And I think he's doing a lot on his own with his friends and his celebrity friends, athletes, and all that, and trying to really, reinvigorate the hobby by doing so, by having one-on-one experiences, and we're seeing more and more of that what he's doing, and with all the videos he's releasing. So I would say that look, that does more in terms of really helping the community versus even hitting an acetate Mike Trout. I mean, that's a great hit, but at the end of the day, I'd rather meet Mike Trout himself than hit an acetate Mike Trout, right? So
Yeah.
I think he's trying his best to really influence young collectors and people that and it seems like Tom Brady is enjoying himself, right? It seems like he's meeting up with Travis Scott and Kevin Hart, and everyone's having fun, and that you know if Mike, the one thing that's great about Fanatics, and I'll say this, is that they are very encouraging. They're full of passion, and they want to do what's right for the hobby. Right now, when it comes to seeding and all these big hits and all that, like I don't know. I mean, maybe the big hits were they had a lot of big hits already in the front of the collation run. I don't know if that's the case. Obviously I saw the latent hits and then I saw other hits like you're talking about, like the collectible guru and all that stuff. And it is what it is. It happens, right? And when it happens, then everyone's like they have their conspiracy hats on. And then the other thing that happens is that, let's say if customer service sends you a 101 card, would a collector say, oh, why is that not even in the product, right? And I can explain why it's not in the product. I can explain all those things that you guys are talking about. Because the 101 cards at the back end, let's say, for example, if customer service has a 101 card, so when we build products, okay, let's say there's 1,000 cases we're making. Obviously, there's more than 1,000 cases, but let's just say, for argument's sake, there's 1,000 cases. I can't go in build a product with 1,000 cases exactly. You got to build extra, just in case, like one case is voided, one of them, right? So number one, you got to build extra for customer service to help relieve the problems if someone missed a case hit, or also like there could be some problems, there could be some damaged cards or whatever. You got to have waste, and the acceptable manufacturing waste or manufacturing errors is actually 2%, the acceptable rate. Anything above 2% is not acceptable, and under 2% you may be skimming out, right? Like you might not have enough to cover it. So you have to have that buffer, and that's what people don't understand, is that if I have 100 cases or 1,000 cases, I can't have exactly 1,000 case hits, or else I may be end up producing 950 cases, which means we don't hit our revenue, we don't hit our profit margins, and guess what? I lose a job. So I have to build that extra buffer to accommodate that.
Yeah.
I know my lights are off.
That's again really good insight and makes sense. I think just a little bit to take one step back to Raul's comment as well. Like obviously, a lot of boxes have been tinfoil talk for a long time. It's good to sort of see Michael coming out and addressing it in some capacity via this audit and all that kind of thing. I'm pretty sure I've always sort of leant more towards, if something like this was in fact happening, it would more than likely be a rogue employee or a handful of rogue employees. I don't think it makes sense for it to be, a strategic business decision or all that kind of thing. Like you said, with the whole Michael Rubin element, being able to lean on his, circle of friends and, influencers and all that kind of thing to try and uplift it. There's far easier ways for him to do it rather than committing fraud, right? So from my perspective, it's always going to be, if it is happening, it's going to be a rogue employee doing it in some capacity that's trying to boost their own KPIs. I think, when I've talked to this before, like putting my audit hat on, and again, not talking for my firm, this is just my opinion. When you've seen stuff like this happen in the past, there's something called, or referred to as, management override of controls, where you've essentially got a really poor business process that allows somebody within there to sort of manipulate it. Now, again, based on the things that Carbon said, that might be incredibly difficult to do. It might be impossible to do, but that's where I think if loaded boxes are happening, it's probably, one person maybe doing it or two people. And, from my perspective, I've talked to this before as well, I think that risk grows exponentially when you're talking about Fanatics Live, because there's a huge, incentive there to commit fraud just based on the ability for a manufacturer to sort of generate revenue from the same box twice. They sell the box to the breaker, that breaker then sells it to somebody, they generate commission off the back of that. There's abilities there, or as an auditor, that's where you'd be looking, and that's where you'd say you need a key control here to make sure that that's not happening, because there's an incentive there for somebody to boost their KPIs and all that kind of thing from a management perspective. And that's then what drives loaded boxes happening. Now, again, that's, more than likely not happening, but just based on the things we're seeing, that's where my mind would be, looking to target to try and say, okay, let's dig a bit deeper. This is what the audit needs to focus on, not just on, the collation of hits and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking. Go ahead, Carvin.
No, I was just saying, look, it's obviously attracted a lot of attention already. The fact that Mike Rubin was being interviewed about it by, I think, on the Ringer, right? So obviously he's aware of it. He's taking the steps necessary to prevent this from happening if that was the case, or have that in place so that doesn't happen. So I think that's a step in the right direction. Whether it's happening or not, we don't know, but at least he's taking the right steps to monitor it, right? Yeah.
Exactly. There's one comment here from Brendan from a little bit ago that I think is an important one to call out. He says, unlicensed cards, no, they have to bring the heat. I think there was one earlier where he said the rise of unlicensed cards is upon us, eyes open. I think Michael Ham shared a similar sentiment because he said they basically have to put, better, autos and patches in there to compete in the first place, which I completely agree with. And I've said that for a long time now. I think just sort of what we're seeing in recent, years, that might be something that gets a bit more appreciated because too many people are playing favorites too much. But there are things out there like Wax Museum Podcast talks about all the time. I'll give that guy a shout out. He's found some really cool, Leaf product as an example that has fantastic patches in there that you can't find anywhere else. And as a collector, to me, who cares whether it says Panini or Topps on there? Who cares whether the player's jersey's on there? This guy wore this in a game. What more do you want as a collector? And I think, we're starting to see that tide turn a little bit. So yeah, can you get your thoughts on that as well, Carvin?
So here's the thing about unlicensed cards, or not major league license, right? Like for example, like Panini has a PA license, so you don't want to say it's unlicensed. It is licensed. Yep. It's not licensed by the MLB. So what I would say about unlicensed cards is that what is the most expensive cost of producing cards? You know what the highest cost is?
I'm assuming the play signatures and the patches. Paying them? No,
it's the license.
What is it? The license. Obviously outside the license. Okay. Yes, yeah.
So let's assume that the license is anywhere from, and I'll just give you a range, from 20 to 30% of the cost of the product, right? So if you're buying a case, let's say a box for $1,000. I mean, obviously there's markups between the manufacturer to the distributors to the store to you, but let's just assume that $1,000. Let's say $300 is going to the licensor and the licensors, right? Which is usually the PA and the league. So that's a lot of money that's going towards that. So what I would say is that obviously you guys might not look at it that way, but if I didn't have a license, it allows me that extra $300 to put into content, so I can get you the better content, right? So that's a big difference where people don't value it. Over a period of time, I think there are times where certain products have not had both licenses, but I think at the end of the day, rookie cards are always measured by licenses, and the collecting community is always recognized that. So I understand that the game worn patches, everyone likes game worn patches, and everyone likes multiple colors. This is what I have to say about game worn patches. I love game worn patches. The most ideal world is to have a 5-color game worn patch for an RPA. But at the end of the day, if you give me a single color, tiny little tiny little patch that's game worn with a single color, I'll take the 5-color any day over it.
Yeah,
doesn't matter if it's game worn or not, right? So to me, it's not. And I understand where people are coming from, saying, "Hey, this jersey was used in this finals and all that." Well, if that's the case, buy the jerseys. That's what I would tell people. If you really care about the jersey itself and photo matching it and all that stuff, and obviously card porn's kind of ruined that aspect of it already. So, but I mean, at the end of the day, like, go buy the jersey, like this little piece of 1 inch by 1 inch jersey, and you say, hey, this is a game that was used in this type of game, and where this person scored 50 points. Like, we don't know how many jerseys they wore, right? At the end of the day, when I'm buying trading cards, I just care about the aesthetics of the trading card. And when I was creating the card designs and all that with the designers, that's all I cared about, was how the card looks, right? You can have the greatest looking patch in the world, but if the card is boring, then I don't really like it then.
Yeah, that's very fair. I think a lot of people are staunch in the sense that they'll say, well, game used jerseys are a lot harder to sort of store and show off from your collection, so they stick to cards, which makes, like, from my perspective, there's a lot of game used soccer jerseys that are very affordable compared to the cards themselves, but I can understand why people want the cards over the jerseys. But you are right as well. There's sort of like two camps, and I think that's one of the things that's maybe stopping some of these pajama cards from becoming a bit more mainstream, for exact reasons like you just said, where people prefer the RPAs from those that are league licensed.
So here's a couple other things about game used jerseys, right? And a lot of people aren't even aware of that. For example, like let's say you look at this year, right? Let's say we follow the rookies this year and talk about RPAs, and everyone will say, well, why isn't every RPA or every rookie card is a game one jersey? Well, okay, Wembayama, not even Scoop, but let's say Brandon Miller, all these guys, Jordan Hawkins, the lottery picks, they're playing, right? They're playing every game and they get 10 minutes a game. Well, what about the guy in the second round that's in the G League and gets like a minute to play, and that's the only jersey he wears? You can't build a calendar with execution knowing that you're going to get jerseys like the Kyle Korver that I was talking about in 0304, and you have to factor in like photo shoot jerseys, or I guess now it's not even non-player affiliated, but in the past, like the fact that we didn't invite Kyle Korver to the photo shoot, I couldn't even get a jersey. I tried to get his jersey because he was in the 3-point contest that year, couldn't even get that. So what I'm saying is that we can't build products with the hope or the desire of getting something. We got to have the product in house, or else the product that's coming out in October or let's say January, which is last year's product from last year, is going to be delayed for another year because we're hoping to get a game one jersey. Now, with that being said, there are actually certain teams, like football teams, the New England Patriots and the Green Bay Packers wear one set of jerseys all year long. That's all they wear, game used. That's why Tom Brady jerseys, even back like let's say 10 years ago, they would be going for $50K a jersey. All other jerseys would be 3,000, but Tom Brady would be 50 because he only wears one set of jerseys. Like he'll wear the home or the white and the blue, and then of course the third jersey, and that's it. Green Bay Packers, same thing. They repair those jerseys. They don't wear multiple jerseys. And everyone was saying, well, what a bunch of idiots. Like, what are these teams doing? Well, Tom Brady may sell, but all the other like 40 other players that you have to buy jerseys and constantly keep an inventory and then create so much work for the equipment manager, they don't sell. So is it worth it for the equipment manager who's 65 years old and trying to manage this inventory and say, hey, we need to make money on the one guy or the two guys, and everyone else we don't care, but you still got to manage it, right? And those are reasons why they only have one set of jerseys. The stars, yes, it makes sense to have more. But the secondary, the tertiary, the bench players, you can't just do it for one or an all, right? And going back to like the patch swapping you're talking about, like lo and behold, I mean, back in the day when I was looking at it, I was looking at doing a database of everything. Say, okay, let's get high resolution photos for every single autograph patch rookie. So when you do that, you open a can of worms. So number one, it takes, for one rookie out of 99, it would probably take close to 2 to 3 days to do that, right? So at that time, there was no cloud storage. We'd have to spend close to like $6 million just in extra data, right? And hard drives and everything back then, because you're talking about because you can't do just one rookie. You got to do all the rookies. You got to do all the patches. Because then the people that don't buy Exquisite, they're going to say, well, what about Ultimate? What about Upper Deck? How come you're not doing it for everything else? So it has to be all or none. So you're talking about like pretty much a big investment to basically verify that the jersey is legit. Then you got to have people managing that database. Right. And if we expose it all, then people don't want to buy it. So we want to hide it and then maybe have a surcharge for people to check it. But then it's just the managing. And then on top of it, so it's 2 days per player. There's a lot of times where these cards come in like right before pack out, like when we're packing up the product, like handing over the cards to the co-packer. So now you're delaying the process of now our products could be late because we have to do a whole database of all these cards coming in. So execution wise, it was almost impossible. I'm not saying it's not possible, it is, but you got to hire a lot more staff. You got to spend a lot more money. And at the end of the day, it's like redemption cards. So what happens with redemption cards is that, let's say there's like 20,000 redemptions that are coming into a one product, let's say, okay, within the first 6 months to a year, 15,000 of those redemptions will be redeemed. And then the 5,000 remaining redemptions, you'd be lucky to see 10 to 20 a year. That's the problem, because we don't go back to a product that's a year old or 2 years old to open boxes and get a redemption. So when people sit there and say, well, why are you guys not providing redemption cards that are like 10 years old? I can tell you the redemption room, like between the redemption cards, whether it's autograph or not autograph, at Upper Deck took about 15 to more than that, like 30,000 square feet just for over 2 years. So if you're adding into 100,000 square feet, now you got to have storage. You got to have people running that and people looking at it and digging through it. So that's what people don't realize, that for what we want as a collector is not necessarily feasible in terms of
You're
cost,
practical.
right?
Yeah.
It's not practical. And I think, Raul, being in the finance world, you can understand that completely then. So
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I
yeah.
mean, you brought up game used jerseys and all of that. And I don't know if you've been following that card porn case with the Spiegel brothers and Ken Golden. Did you ever follow that, or not really?
I know of it. Yeah, of course I
Yeah,
know of it. Yeah, the
you know
44.
of it. I mean, what are your thoughts of it? Do you think card porn actually used Photoshop to
Well,
screw things around to try to
he
take that
definitely.
auction down?
Yeah, I mean, he definitely could have. I mean, let's just put it this way: at the end of the day, people with ill intent and people with bad integrity, and we're learning more and more about card porn now. That's an issue, right? So I mean, I met Juan at the National. He seemed pretty nice and pretty, transparent. But who would have thought that all this would come up afterwards? And I guess you pegged him well, Raul. So you knew all along.
So what? So I'm not like bashing you here, but
Mhm.
why did so many people have confidence in such a con man like that?
It's not.
Because
It's not a matter,
I could see the behavioral patterns of it,
right?
and that's why I went nuts on it, and I kept on doing it, even though people kept on saying like you're nuts, you're crazy. But
Mhm.
I'm just trying to understand the other side, that how could this con man get the confidence of so many people?
Well, at the end of the day, you know what? I'm I always give people a chance, right? If I don't, then I wouldn't even be on here talking to you guys at this point, right?
Mm.
So trust me, I think people will say that I'm overly nice. They may think, obviously I'll always have trolls, just like everyone else does, right?
Mhm.
And I always give everyone, the first opportunity until proven to me that they're not trustworthy, right? And obviously with everyone has flaws, and you just have to build that relationship. And obviously with card porn, you really didn't never build that relationship, because he was always like anonymous, right?
Mm.
So that was more of the issue than anything else. But yeah, and, unfortunately he's turned out to be a con man, and it's just disappointing to hear. You would hope that someone being a watchdog, even being anonymous, would have high integrity, but I guess not. So
I think the frustrating thing with that is, I said this in a video the other day, actually, where if you look at maybe the last 12 to 18 months, a lot of people that have sort of disappeared from the hobby due to, nefarious acts were sponsored content creators and were aligned in some capacity. And
mhm.
I feel like, some of the blame maybe needs to go back to the businesses for being too quick to throw money at people, because a lot of these guys that sort of came in and got these sponsorships and stuff were sort of new to the hobby as well. And where some of these scams sort of happened, and not in the card porn situation, but some of these other ones where they were given a platform, they were sponsored, they were aligned to these businesses, so they had that aura of trust around them, because people were like, well, I like buying from that platform, I like that manufacturer, I like that grader, so now I'm going to like this person because I trust them, they're aligned, so on and so forth. And I think it's pretty clear that not a lot of due diligence was done with some of that stuff. Now, again, sort of like you said, Carbon, it's a bit hard to police, right? Because at the end of the day, you don't know somebody all that well, and you sort of give them the benefit of the doubt and all that sort of stuff. But someone like Juan, who was a notorious con man by all reports, looked like he fooled a lot of people. So, it'd be hard for these businesses to spot this stuff, like it was for a lot of people to spot it. But, like in Raul's case and mine to a lesser extent, some of the signs were sort of there already. So it's like, well, what could these businesses be doing to better monitor this stuff as well? And that's where my mind goes with a lot of these guys that have got taken down for that choice of words, because they were sponsored. What could they have done more to do better to protect the wider hobby? But again, it's difficult. So yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, we're all here because we love the community, we love sports cards, right? And once again, for me, it's more about the people than it is about the cards, even though the cards is the common denominator, right?
Yeah.
So and at the end of the day, like, whether you're buying cards because you want to flip and make money, you want to be a dealer, you want to invest, or you just enjoy the cards, that's all up to you. I'm not going to be here and be critical of people that want to make money in the sports card world. Now, how you go about making your money and doing things that are wrong and with ill intent, and that's where I hold issues with. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, like, you know what, if we want to encourage each other and are all passionate collectors, that's awesome, man. Like, I mean, I think you're
Mm.
gonna see that, Dan, in Macau, because a lot of the Asian collectors are truly collectors. Like, they
Yeah.
hold their Crayo cards, their diamond hands. And for you, Raul, if you're not going to Macau, the show that I would recommend you going to is the one in Toronto. Hockey collectors are by far the purest collectors of all the sports. Like, people
Yeah,
help each
I
other
heard
out.
that show is pretty good.
Yeah, well, it's also the collectors themselves. So there's collectors because you have a PC, and they're like, they know that they can't get back enough in terms of returns and trade for your PC. They'll be happy to give it to you because they know it's going to a good home. You're not going to sell it. So there
Yeah.
are people like that. I seen people give like $3,000 to $4,000 cards back like 20 years ago to help people's PC. So
Yeah. The
that's
same
that's
thing
the
happens here in Australia. Actually, it's funny you
yeah.
mentioned the Macau show because I recorded a video last night that releases tomorrow talking about it, and literally that's one of the things I talk to where the collectors over there have such fantastic stuff. I'm really excited to try and film a bit. I'm going to try and do some vlogs to try and get the American audience in tune with some of the cards these guys own because it's like honestly amazing what you see on social media, and I can't wait to sort of see it in person. But basically, what you said is also what happens here in Australia, where people are primarily collectors first and foremost, and you'll see that when you go to card shows here. Some of the Jordan, autos and cards that are out this way, including LeBron and Kobe, some of the best in the world. And these guys are just average Joe collectors because that's what the hobby was before the last 3 to 4 years, where it became a little bit more than that. So
Well,
yeah,
I remember doing
100% agree.
I did my first sports card live interview, and there was a collector from Australia that said that he had an exquisite set he was working on, but he was missing Carmelo and LeBron. And he
Mm.
said, I mentioned that on that live, I had an 8 Allen Ginter card. He goes, "Can you sign an Allen Ginter card for me with just with the number of LeBron's card number and Carmelo's card number?" I said, "Yeah, I'll send it to you and I'll mail it out to you." And he goes, and I'll send you a bunch of stuff. So he sent me a bunch of stuff from Immaculate that he's actually putting a set of the gold number to jersey number, Immaculate numbers, and
Mm.
he sent me a bunch of those golds in return. And I was like, okay, I'll just give it to my daughter. But I mean, those to me are so undervalued. The first
Yeah.
year Immaculate, the Immaculate numbers, the acetate holographic gold out of patches. And I still love that set. It's one of my favorite sets I did. So
I think a lot of your work is fantastic. So again, I'm very grateful for you to put that out there because stuff like this, I've got this flawless card here, probably wouldn't exist if you didn't do that.
well, I
This,
didn't work on Flawless. So
I know you
Flawless
didn't
was
work on
that.
flawless, but this wouldn't have
Yeah,
existed if Exquisite wasn't so popular, right?
right. But I was there when Flawless came about. I was with the basketball because I was running the basketball team, and Flawless came about. And when the name Flawless came out, and they're like, you got to do RPA this, RPA that. And I'm like, well, the problem is that having Flawless at a higher price point and doing true RPAs, it's going to devalue the national treasure.
Yeah.
So that's why I said, well, with a name like Flawless, maybe we should go with diamonds, and that's what we went with diamonds as
Yeah.
being the base set, so that you have diamond rookies versus diamond RPA or true RPA rookies.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Flawless, it's a great set. Everything's, well, not everything, but majority is game worn, and all hard sign autographs. It's truly one of Panini's best brands. But here's
Yeah.
something I can leave you with you. For Immaculate, do you know the origin of Immaculate, how it came about?
No.
So going back on my childhood now, so I used to be a big sports card collector when I was like 8 years old, 10 years old to 12, and then by the time I got to 12, it was basically card shaming. If you collected hockey cards, people were like, "Oh my God, you're a little baby collecting hockey cards." So I got out of it, and then I got into comic books. So I went through a stage, and I got into comic books. I was a big Wolverine fan because he's from Canada and I'm Canadian, and he had no holds barred. So I love Wolverine. I bought a 181 Hulk 181 at $12 a book, and got
Yeah.
grilled for it for spending $12 to buy a comic
That's
book
worth a lot
back
more
in the
now.
'80s. Oh, I know, I know, I
Yeah.
still have it.
Nice.
So.
Nice.
And then after that, I got out of comic books, sold off part of my Uncanny X-Men set, and got into records, and wanted to DJ as a kid, right, as a teenager, back in the day, and spinning records and scratching. And at that point, the first time I went, I took the subway all the way from, because I live in the suburbs of Toronto, going all the way downtown to pick up EPs, the 12-inch extended versions, right?
Yep.
So there's three songs I got. The first one was Run DMC's first ever big hit. It's called "It's Like That." It's
Mhm.
like that, right? So that was their first hit before they even made it big. The second one was a one-hit wonder. It was like a kind of like what do you call it, freestyle type music, new wave freestyle. And then the last one was this young act at that time was underground club act, right? And it was a female dancer, singer, right? So I was like, man, I think this woman's going to be a big hit in the future. So for me, it's like for buying anything, maybe it's because my sports card mentality is like buying anything is like prospecting. Whether
Yep.
I'm prospecting comic books, and then when it came down to records, I wanted to be like prospecting, not so much like saying this is worth a lot more money, but prospecting saying I knew this artist before they made it big. Like U2, I got their first ever EP, right? And I was like, I knew U2 was going to be big, like with War and Sunday Bloody Sunday, all those EPs, I have those. But this one was Madonna. Madonna's first big hit on the underground was called Physical Attraction. So that was one of the first EPs I bought. So Immaculate Collection is actually Madonna's greatest hits album in 1990. So I
Okay.
always had a fondness for the name Immaculate Collection, not because of the Bible, not because of football with Franco Harris and Terry Bradshaw, but it was because of Madonna. So there you have it. The origin of Immaculate Collection is
Nice.
Madonna. Yeah.
Thank you. Just quickly, the triangles that are on the Immaculate cards, the art, is that based off Wolverine's suit, or is that just a coincidence?
No, that's just a coincidence. So
Coincidence. Okay.
the one thing is that the whole acetate cards came from a screw up. So when I was building a set back at Upper Deck, it was called Trilogy, and I wanted acetate autograph patch rookie variations. So in Trilogy, they had rookies numbered out of I think 299 or 499, like Dwight Howard, Andre Iguodala, all these guys. And I wanted out of 10 an autographed patch card of a variation of the rookie card. So the card's not
Mhm.
exactly the same. It's not a parallel, but it's a variation out of 10 with a patch and an auto, and it's on acetate. So when the designer showed it to me, he said, "Okay, well, this is what it's going to look like." I go, "You have acetate on white. Why would you put acetate on white? I want it to be transparent, right?" He
Mm.
goes, "Well, we can't do it transparent for these reasons." I said, "Okay, fine." And then when I saw the cards for the first time, and once in a while I'll go down to the athletes relations area where all the cards come in before they go out for autographs, or if they came back, I'll just go down and look at it. And I saw these cards, I'm like, oh my God, these cards are beautiful.
Mm.
So when I could never use the name Immaculate at Upper Deck because they said that's too much of a religious reference, so they weren't
Connotation, yeah.
using it, or connotation. And when I went to Panini, I was like, okay, I'm gonna call this Immaculate. I actually had a different name, and I changed it to Immaculate because they didn't like the first name. And the whole acetate idea, because the inspiration is Madonna and me DJing, that's why the acetate kind of resembles like vinyl. That's the whole
Okay.
idea. So
Yeah.
you have that. It doesn't have the grooves or anything. Obviously, people would
Mm.
complain if there's grooves on it, but it has that vinyl look, and that's the origin of that. But
That's
it also
awesome.
came from Trilogy though. That the original card came from Trilogy. So I had that
Okay.
Trilogy card. I bought a couple of those and showed it to the designers at Panini and said, "This is what I want to do for Immaculate."
Yeah, that's awesome. You've dropped a lot of knowledge today. Very thankful for that. I think the chat is very thankful for that as well. Yeah, I look forward to meeting you in Macau, by the way. That'll be good fun. I didn't realize you were going. I'm hoping to find more flawless soccer, to be honest, because that's where a lot of it is. So hopefully I can find some more Chelsea-related stuff.
You're a Chelsea
But
fan?
yeah, I'm a huge Chelsea fan.
Okay.
And I love the fact that it's all match-worn for flawless for soccer. They only did 1 year of it, as I'm sure you know. So what's interesting that a lot of people don't know, that I've talked to this before on the channel, is that I'm pretty sure that every single Premier League player, because as you can see here, it's got the national team kit on for players, but for every Premier League player, they use their Premier League kit rather than the national kit, which annoys some people because it doesn't match the image on the card. But for me, being a Chelsea fan, being how rare some of that stuff is for game-worn stuff, it's a no-brainer. Like me being able to sit there, for those of you that follow soccer quite closely, like this guy scored probably the most important goal in Chelsea's history, second most important goal, got us into the final to win our first Champions League. Drogba's goal in that final was probably the most important goal in our history, but to own that as a collector is awesome. So that was my mini rant on Flawless Soccer. Sorry.
No, look at you can tell from the way that you're describing it and how enthused you are, and that's your passion. So that's awesome. That's always great to hear. Like I said, when I go to the national and I talk to people and they get so excited about their cards, that's what excites me. So back in the day when I was at Upper Deck, trust me, there's a lot of work, like a lot of spreadsheets, a lot of calculations, and there's a lot of beat downs. Even when I created Exquisite in 03, 04, in 04, I went to it was like a 4-month battle with the executives saying, we're going to do a $500 per pack product. And I'm like, you're joking. You're out of your mind. And I'm like, no, we're going to do a $500 per pack product. And they just screamed at me. We had to change the names because it was originally called Black. I wanted UD Black. I had the marketing ideas behind it. And we had to change it to Exquisite, which I wasn't happy because Exquisite is more like jewelry. So, yeah. I mean, obviously now today, different story now. But with that said, I did feedback panels. I went to visit a bunch of shops. They all came in and they just ripped into me all night. It's like, you're an idiot. You're just an idiot. And those people will still admit to it. I went to a couple of them. They're like, remember you ripped into me for Exquisite? I said, yeah, we were the idiots, not you.
Well, so I'm glad you didn't listen and Upper Deck didn't listen, because I'd be curious to see what products we'd have out there right now if that thing didn't come out when it did. It's like we never really know, right? But
yeah, I agree.
Especially when you've got people looking and sort of timing it with LeBron and Carmelo's rookie drafts as well. I think it came out the year before that, right? Was it the first year before that?
That was intentional.
Okay.
I purposely put Exquisite there because I knew that LeBron would have that reach, and obviously when something is successful, then you build brand equity, right? So why not piggyback on LeBron's popularity to build brand equity on the product? That's the best way of doing it. So by the same time, I mean, I was working on hockey and basketball at the same time for many years at Upper Deck. Well, there's a reason why the cup came out with Crosby and Ovechkin rookie year, right? So it just matches
even the
exactly.
Cup, some of those cards look phenomenal. Even they still make it, right? The cup, I'm pretty sure.
Yes.
I see Jeremy Lee talk about it all the time, and just some of the patches in that look so cool. And that's everything for card collecting for me. It's the stuff I always coveted as a kid. It was always too expensive. Right. I kick myself now because when Flawless Soccer was released, soccer being my main sport that I collect, I do collect basketball as well, and sort of everything else. But when Flawless Soccer got released, couldn't afford to buy it. I was in between jobs. I was a carpenter before I do what I do now. So I was at university studying to be an accountant, and it was too expensive. And now I look back at what some of those cards sold for. There's so many cool rookie patch orders and all that kind of thing that sold so cheap. But I'm very thankful I can get them now at the very least, because they still are very affordable in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I always look at it and think, man, I wish I bought a bunch of stuff, but you can't worry about the past. You can only worry about the future, right? And that's it. And guess what? There's the one thing I always talk about when people collect, especially when they used to collect. And number one, lapsed collectors are probably the first to come back, and nostalgia sets in. And it's always, sorry, I turn my car on and off. Yeah. So once again, it's always like the card that you used to have that you sold off. That's the card you want most, right?
Yeah.
Or it's always the card that you always wanted as a kid and never got. That's the other card that you want most. So those two cards are always the first ones that you are. That's in your basically your crosshairs, right? You want to remember so far as for you.
Yep. I've got maybe 2 or 3 minutes left. Was there anything either of you wanted to share? I'm very thankful, obviously, both of you coming on and for you jumping in on very late notice, Carvin. It's been fantastic. And apologies for cutting it short, but I need to finish packing for this holiday. I leave on December 7th, but I've not packed anything yet. So I will be getting to that. But was there anything you guys wanted to talk to before we wrapped up?
No, I've pretty much set up what I needed to.
All right. Well, thanks for having me on, everyone. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was nice talking to you.
Really appreciate you both. Thank you. Maybe before we drop off, if there was any questions for Raul or Carvin before we go, maybe we can answer 1 or 2 questions and then we can go. Because I know there was a bunch that I missed in the chat, so I feel really bad about that. But it was really
like
hard
this,
to manage today.
Question from Warlock. What I want to know is TTM, if Fanatics will forbid the athletes from doing that or signing at ballparks, etc. I do a lot of TTM, and that's why I've been very aggressive this past year, just trying to get as many autographs as possible, because I'm not sure if some of these athletes or former athletes will be able to sign. And I don't know what your thoughts are about that, Carvin. I don't know if you even do TTM, but that's what I like to do.
So at Upper Deck, I mean, most of the times we encourage the athletes to do TTM because what happens is that, you know, that's an experience. Like, let's say any collector or any child that goes to meet up with an athlete or writes to an athlete and don't get anything back, that's kind of discouraging, and you kind of lose interest in that player or that team or even in the hobby, right? And you know, the last thing we want is that, oh, it's Upper Deck not allowing these guys sign autographs, right? What we encourage, like especially for most of the spokespeople that we would have, is like, if you can sign a different version of your autograph, then that would be ideal, because obviously we want the nicest version of the autograph is for our products, where you're getting paid and everyone's paying a lot more money for it. But there are athletes that just can't do TTMs either. It's like, you know, there's some of the bigger athletes, like if they do TTM, they'll be all day signing autographs, right? Yeah. And the sad part about TTMs too is that there's a lot of auto pens when it comes to TTM, when it's going to the stadium and all that too. So you gotta be cautious of what you're getting back. So, you know, just a couple of points. But I mean, I think most of the card companies would encourage the athletes to sign TTMs, just because you want the fan or the collector to have a great experience, right? So,
yeah, I think that's very on the money. Probably what I'd say as well. It would be weird for them to try and enforce that, because you're then infringing on, you know, the hobby's ability to grow a little bit, and you want, like you said a bit earlier about Michael Rubin interacting with, you know, these athletes and these influencers and all that kind of stuff to build the hobby. That's the stuff you want to be happening, right? It's going to grow the hobby long term, and if you start strangling that and trying to bottleneck it, it sort of defeats the purpose of what your business is there to do in the first place. So.
So let me answer Patch's question here. He says that Fanatics doesn't allow like signing inscriptions and all that. Not necessarily the case. So I'll explain to you what happens. Like, let's say when I'm doing a player appearance, and a lot of times we'll have like the Panini or Upper Deck has their own photos that you get signed. The whole purpose is that when you're doing a signing, the time is very sensitive, right? That's why a lot of times when you go to an event, there's like no photos, no, don't bring your own stuff to get signed, because we want to get through as many people as we can. The last thing you want is like 100 people still waiting in line and said, "Oh, the athlete has to leave." That's something that's probably a no-no. So you want to get through everyone and get everything done. And same thing when it comes to at events. you have inscriptions. You know, obviously there's times where they'll let you have inscriptions for a certain fee, but then in other cases, even if there isn't a certain fee, they don't want inscriptions, because you always have to listen to what you have to say. What do you want inscribed? How do you spell this? How do you do that? You know, personalizations is great, but unfortunately it takes up time, and you only have these athletes for a certain amount of time, and that's why you want to get through as much as you can.
Yes. That was good insight once again, Carvin. Thank you. I think we will wrap it up there. Again, I want to thank you both for coming on. That was really good fun, and hopefully we can do it with you both again at some point in the future. And I look forward to seeing you in Macau, Carvin. Right. I'll be there day 1 and day 3. I've got a wedding on day 2, so it's really frustrating because there's Christian Vieri's meant to be there. My brother's named after him. He's an Italy legend. He's doing autographs, but he's only going to be there on day 2, so I'm going to miss out. But a card that I bought to get him to sign is currently sitting in Ship My Cards that I don't think I'm going to get into Macau in time anyway. So it is what it is. But again, that's just me thinking out loud. Sorry.
Wait a minute, you have a wedding? So you're going back to Australia and then going back to Macau?
No, a wedding in Hong Kong. So my wife is my wife has family over there. So we're going to Hong Kong, traveling to Macau for the show, and then going back. So the wedding's on December 8th, and then basically staying in Hong Kong because we're going to go to Disneyland and stuff with my daughter.
If you're going to go to Disneyland, you got to go to Japan. I'm just telling you right now.
Yeah,
Japan's the best.
We're sort of already there. I got a bit lucky. I think I said this before on the channel. My father-in-law retired this year, so we got invited to this wedding because it's his sister, so my wife's cousin, getting married, and he was like, "I'll just pay for everyone to sort of go over there. We'll make it like a mini retirement thing." So it worked out for me because I don't have to pay for flights or anything like that. I'm very thankful for that, obviously. So yes, Japan would be better, but beggars can't be choosers. So
No
I'll just deal
worries.
with Hong Kong Disneyland will be good enough.
All right. Okay.
Alrighty. Cheers both. Thank you. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Sorry again, I couldn't get to all your questions, but I think that's it. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Cheers.
All right, cheers.
See ya.